Chapter 925. Seven-Star Soul Pearl. Back when the Seven Souls Nation was destroyed, the Seven-Star Soul Pearls were divided among the invading sections 2 months before the ancient desolate heaven region opened. Chu Hen destroyed the Shura sect, the Illusory Rain sect, and the otherworldly spirit sect in the 100 Kingdoms province. From there, he obtained the Fekta, Mizar, and Migres star beads. After that, during the battle in the Xiankshetra sky region, Chu Hen killed the descendants of the Seven Souls Palace's imperial family and obtained the Alcade star bead again. In addition to the Dubhi star bead that he possessed, Chu Hen now had 5 star beads in his hands. As long as he obtained the remaining Merak and Alioth, he would have a complete 7-star. The remaining 2 beads were in the Heavenly Cloud Manor and the Immortal Pavilion. Long Xuanxuang deduced that Chu Hen would most likely go to these 2 places. The Immortal Pavilion is right in front. Lung Lingyan's reminder made everyone speed up. Swish, 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 many figures hurriedly shuttled through the forest. The Immortal Pavilion was built near the demonic beast mountain range. This sect's method of survival was relatively unorthodox. It used a special secret technique that no one knew of to graft the limbs of demonic beasts onto the human body, thereby strengthening the physical strength and combat strength of the body. Of course, the existence of anything meant that it was reasonable. The Immortal Pavilion had been in the Eastern Victory State for hundreds of years. Although it was unorthodox, it had always been peaceful. However, when the group from Mount Kunlia Mountain arrived at the Immortal Pavilion, the scene before them made everyone's hearts tremble. The huge manor was rather grand. The extravagance of the buildings and pagodas inside was not inferior to some of the higher-level sections. However, this place that was comparable to a palace in an imperial city was currently filled with corpses. The blood that flowed on the ground gathered into small streams, all kinds of scales, claws, beast arms, eagle wings, and other broken limbs were scattered on the ground. Everyone shook their heads. Rather than saying that a fierce fight had broken out here, it would be better to say that a one-sided brutal massacre had taken place. "Let's go in and take a look," said Shanjin solemnly. Before he finished speaking, Yi Yao, Long Xuanxuang Haozi, and the others had already charged into the inner region of the Immortal Pavilion. Chu Hen, whom they hoped to see, hadn't left yet. However, the scene inside could only be described as horrifying. As far as the eye could see, there was not a single living person to be found. Haozi and Mu Feng looked at each other and sighed helplessly. "Looks like we're a step too late. Only Skycloud Manor is left." Everyone looked at Lung Lingyan, obviously asking for the location of the Heavenly Cloud Manor. Lung Lingyan frowned slightly, and her expression was slightly solemn. "The fastest way to the Heavenly Cloud Manor is through the Tiantong dynasty." What? Everyone was shocked in their hearts, and a bad premonition surged into their hearts. Greater East State was in chaos. All the sects and forces fell into an unprecedentedly tense atmosphere. Other than the whereabouts of Chu Hen, everyone was also concerned about the situation of the 5 million elites sent by the Tiantong dynasty. After all, the previous 6 armies had not even left the gates of the Greater East State, and nearly 1 million of them had already been killed. If something happened to those 5 million elites, then the Tiantong dynasty would truly suffer a heavy loss this time. Learn from the mistakes of the past. The Tiantong dynasty had sent out many experts to protect them, afraid that Chu Hen would not come. In a dazzling and luxurious imperial hall, there was a 5-clawed golden dragon engraved on the pillars, a flight of stairs made of gold, as well as a supreme dragon throne. All sorts of symbols of power had created the Tiantong dynasty's 1,000 years of greatness. When will our armored cavalry trample through that barbarian land? Directly above the throne room, a middle-aged man wearing a dragon robe and a dragon crown on his head shouted at the court officials below. His eyes were like torches. This person was none other than the ruler of the Tiantong dynasty, Xiao Zong. "Your Majesty," a treacherous official respectfully replied, "according to the messenger, General Zhao and the others have already arrived at the Great Yuan Mountain. In at most 5 days, they will be able to step into the 100-nation state. Why do we need 5 days? Xiao Zhang's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. Your Majesty, please calm down. The 5 million army is a large number. It is inevitable that there will be some bumps along the way. Pass down our decree. Anyone who delays military orders will be beheaded. Give Zhao Si 3 days to reach the 100-nation state. After that, we must exterminate all the barbarians in the 100-nation state. A thick majestic aura swept out from Xiao Zhang's body. Anyone could feel the other party's anger and killing intent. Ever since Xiao Zong came to power, this was the first time the officials had seen the other party so angry. Your Majesty, please be at ease. In less than a month, there will no longer be a 100-nation state in this world. That's right. When our Heaven's Empire's cavalry descends south, we will definitely turn that barbarian land into a river of blood. Not even the fowls and dogs will be spared to show our empire's might. Those who offend our empire's might will pay a price that is 10 million times greater. Killing 9 clans was a small matter, and killing 10 clans was also a small matter. In everyone's mind, the tragic scene of the 100-nation state being plunged into misery and suffering, with corpses piling up into a mountain appeared. Xiao Zong placed his hands behind his back, and a trace of a cold smile appeared on his face. A general success was built on 10,000 corpses. After the 100-nation state was bathed in blood, who would dare to provoke the Heaven's Empire? Rumble! However, at this moment, an earth-shattering sound came from outside the hall. Everyone was shocked, but before they could react, 2 old men with piercingly cold auras instantly flashed to Xiao Zhang's side. Your Majesty, be careful! Bang! As soon as they finished speaking, an earth-shattering sword ray that emitted a boundless, terrifying aura slashed down with the force of splitting a mountain. The dazzling and resplendent sword light was like a divine blade that could split the heavens. It directly split the entire throne room into 2. Large and small rocks exploded. The divine blade-like sword ray poured out, and wherever it went, the bricks and tiles cracked, the walls were cut, and a huge ravine appeared on the floor of the hall. More than 10 civil and military officials, who could not dodge in time, were directly cut in half by this merciless sword ray. Xiao Zong, under the protection of 2 imperial experts, quickly retreated from the collapsed hall. The sky darkened and rocks flew everywhere. Miserable wails and screams filled the air. Before the many experts and guards could react to what happened, a soaring roar of demonic beasts resounded throughout the world. Roar. Screech. Huge beasts with frightening ferocious auras appeared out of nowhere in the Heaven's Empire's imperial city. Those that flew in the sky and those that ran on the ground were like meteorites that fell from the sky, smashing holes one after another and destroying luxurious buildings one after another. Countless palaces were turned into ruins, and many guards were trampled to death. In an instant, the entire imperial city fell into unprecedented chaos. All kinds of chaotic shockwaves swept in all directions, wantonly launching attacks. In the sky above the golden imperial hall that was split in half by a sword ray, a cold figure that emitted endless sharpness coldly looked at the ground, and the green holy sword in his hand was surrounded by ripples of energy. Then, that sharp sword-like gaze directly shot towards Xiao Zong. This was a confrontation between a commoner and an emperor. However, as an emperor, the moment Xiao Zong met the other party's gaze, all of his supreme prestige collapsed, an indescribable fear surged like a tide. Chapter 926. Buzz, chaotic waves of energy engulfed the inside and outside of the imperial palace. Dust filled the sky and the earth trembled. Huge demonic beasts wreaked havoc, setting off waves of flames and smoke. The throne room was slashed open by a sword, and many of the civil and military officials died on the spot. Xiao Zhang's eyes involuntarily trembled when he saw the young figure standing in the sky. He clenched his fists and subconsciously cried out in a cold voice. It's you," even though he had never seen him before. Today was the first time they met, but Shout Song was very sure that the young man in front of him was the Chu Hen who caused chaos in the victorious Eastern Province. Surprise. A huge surprise. No one present would have thought that Chu Hen would actually dare to kill his way into the imperial palace of the Heaven Empire. What an arrogant bastard. How dare he barge into this place? The one who spoke was one of the old men protecting Shout Song. His eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. The other old man also frowned and revealed a frosty expression. As he looked at the ferocious giant beasts, the cold light in his eyes grew even colder. He said in a low voice, "I'm afraid this brat has come prepared. Don't be too careless, who cares if he came prepared or not? Today I will make sure that he won't be able to return." Whoosh, the heavy iron weapon let out a light sound in the air. The old man who spoke first put his right hand behind his back, and suddenly, a flying wheel with 3 leaves appeared in his hand. The center of the flying wheel was empty, and the 3 leaves were in a spiral shape. They were incomparably sharp and flickered with a dark blue poisonous light. Killing intent filled the air, and waves of energy stacked up. Chu Hen looked at the people below. His indifferent voice seemed to cause ripples in the air. "It seems that slaughtering 1,000,000 of your troops did not teach you how to restrain yourselves. Slaughtering the enemy's elite troops seemed to be a warning to the Heaven Empire. However, they ignored this warning and became even more aggressive. They directly sent an additional 5,000,000 troops to the 100 Nations province. At this very moment, Chu Hen had directly killed his way into the imperial family of the imperial capital with an earth-shattering momentum. The expressions of everyone couldn't help but change, and at the moment of their rage, the corners of Shout Song's eyes squinted as well as he berated in a low voice. "Audacious thief, you're simply courting death. Kill him." As soon as he finished speaking, the old man with the 3-leaf flywheel on his back released a powerful killing intent and said to the other old man, "Elder Shi, protect his majesty. Let me end this bastard's life." Buzz, after saying that, the old man leaped up and set off a strong gust of wind towards Chu Hen. "Insolent thief, I'm the supreme elder of the dynasty, Xinglun. Today, I'll make sure you die under my 3 ferocious wheels. Wheel of punishment." He was a top-notch expert who could be ranked in the entire Dongxing region. His strength had already reached the 6th level of the Sky Profound Realm. The Wheel of 3 Fierce Beasts was ranked 11th on the Saint Weapon ranking. With the power of this sacred weapon, Xing Luan's battle prowess was definitely terrifying. Xiao. When he was less than 100 meters away from Chu Hen, Xing Luan directly threw out the Wheel of 3 Fierce Beasts in his hand. It pierced through the air like the divine wheel of wind and fire, and it had an extremely destructive aura. It dragged a series of afterimages in the air, and its speed was as fast as lightning as it slashed diagonally towards Chu Hen's chest. It seemed as if it wanted to kill him with a single strike. Facing such a threatening attack, Chu Hen's expression was still calm. He raised the blue sky sword in his hand, and the tip of the sword directly avoided the tip of the wheel and accurately hit the side of one of the blades. Ding! The Wheel of 3 Fierce Beasts was instantly repelled. However, in the next instant, Elder Xing Luan flicked his wrist with a cold smile, and another swift and fierce flying wheel shot out explosively. The corners of Chu Hen's eyes narrowed, and he flipped his hand and repelled the second wheel with a backhand strike. Sparks flew everywhere, and true origin rained down. Then, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th wheel. The wheel quickly slashed out from Xing Luan's palm. In an instant, more than a dozen flying wheels flickering with the light of death swept towards Chu Hen like a divine wheel that could take his life. The air flow between the two became especially restless and chaotic. Ding, ding, ding. Chu Hen's eyes were like torches, and his sword moved according to his will. A series of sword phantom flickered in the air, continuously repelling the flying wheels that were flying towards him. His calm and unruffled face gave people a feeling that they couldn't see through him and couldn't see through him. Ding! When the last flying wheel was repelled by Chu Hen, a cold and gloomy wind suddenly attacked from behind. Whoosh, like a ghost, the afterimages floated, and Xing Luan, who was in front of Chu Hen a second ago, suddenly appeared behind him. In this world, it's not only your blue sky sword that has the ability to speed up. Go to hell. Trash. Xing Luan's wrinkled old face revealed a sinister smile. Whoosh. Accompanied by the sound of air being torn apart, the withered old hand held a sharp flying wheel and directly slashed towards Chu Hen's neck. It was a matter of life and death, there was no way to avoid it. Below, Xiao Tsang, Elder Shi, and the others from the Heaven Unified Dynasty all revealed cold expressions. That damned thing had finally come to an end. Hiss. The sound of a sharp weapon piercing through flesh assaulted the eardrums of everyone present. Fresh blood blossomed behind Chu Hen's back and danced. Everyone's pupils constricted, but they saw that Chu Hen didn't even turn his head, and his back was facing Xing Luan. Chu Hen clenched his hands and used a sword-sheathing technique to directly stab the blue sky sword into Xing Luan's abdomen. Chi. Violent black lightning covered the holy sword and entered Xing Luan's body, paralyzing the opponent's meridians and limbs. As a result, the sharp flying wheel in Xing Luan's hand stopped in the air before it could reach Chu Hen's neck. It was a clean and efficient sword strike. And an extremely bold sword. Everyone was shocked by the scene in front of them and didn't know what to do. It was as if Chu Hen already knew that Xing Luan would flash behind him. He didn't even wait for the opponent to make a move and had already stabbed the sword into Xing Luan's body. This guy. Elder Shi clenched his fists with eyes full of hatred. Even though he was struck by Chu Hen's sword, Xing Luan, as the supreme elder of the Heaven's Unified Dynasty, was not an ordinary person. He immediately steadied his mind and a vast amount of true essence surged out. Then, his palm covered in dense light firmly grasped the blade of the blue sky sword, and he forcibly retreated. Hiss. Blood gushed out from his abdomen. Damn it, Xing Luan's eyes were wide open as he gritted his teeth. He didn't care about his injuries and immediately retreated 100 meters away. Then, he raised his arms and, along with a soaring power, countless flying wheels flew out from his body like wind blade. Divine wheel blood formation. Swish, 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 the sound of the rapid piercing wind filled the sky and covered the earth. The densely packed flywheels drew lines of beautiful arcs in the air, then attacked Chu Hen from different angles. Chu Hen dragged his sword and released a series of floating light sword shadows. With regards to the screen images that filled the sky, he acted as if they were nothing. With a flick of his sword, his figure flashed like a ghost, making it difficult for the naked eye to follow him. What was this guy's cultivation? The people of the Heaven Unified Dynasty were even more shocked. At the Xianchao firmament region, it was speculated that he was at the third rank of the Sky Profound Realm. Then, after the Thunder Saint Palace's elder Lei Wen was killed, it was speculated that he was at the fourth rank of the Sky Profound Realm, but now, even Xing Luan, who was at the sixth rank of the Sky Profound Realm, was almost killed. Every time Chu Hen appeared, people would overturn their previous speculations. Roar! Roar! The demon beasts continued to wreak havoc. The situation in the Imperial Palace was getting more and more chaotic. Xiao Zheng's mood became a lot more anxious. He had sent more than half of the Imperial family's experts to the 100 Nations Prefecture to escort the 5 million troop. And now, the people that were left behind were already unable to block the attacks brought by Chu Hen. Distant water could not put out a nearby fire. The power had been separated, and now the Imperial Palace was in danger. Looking at the palace buildings being trampled and the courtyards being razed to the ground, Xiao Zheng's anger rose as he gnashed his teeth. Elder Shi, who was at the side, also knew that Elder Xing Luan alone would not be able to defeat Chu Hen. His expression sank as he shouted to the guards behind him, "Protect His Majesty. If His Majesty loses even a single hair, all of you will be beheaded." Yes. Roar! As soon as he finished speaking, a huge crocodile covered in thorny back armor broke through the palace wall and pounced towards Xiao Zong. Its huge mouth opened wide and a bloody smell came out. "Humph! Impudent beast!" Elder She snorted coldly, then leaped up and landed steadily on the back of the huge crocodile. Then, he clenched his fists and stepped forward in a horse stance. With a deep voice, he shouted, "Thousand catty fall, buzz!" The sudden burst of power was comparable to the pressure of Mount Tai. A circle of brown light spread out from under Elder She's feet. Crack! The sound of bones breaking was extremely clear. The huge crocodile's huge body bent into a bow shape, and then fell heavily to the ground. Its scales cracked and its internal organs were smashed, creating a huge pit on the ground. Elder She did not look at the huge crocodile's corpse. Once again, he raised a monstrous flame and rushed towards Chu Hen. Rhino God Force. Buzz! A vast amount of true essence surrounded Elder She's body like a storm, and the airflow above the entire imperial city became particularly restless. Moo! The roar of a bull and a beast resounded through the sky. Immediately, a phantom of a huge golden rhinoceros appeared outside Elder She's body, like a divine beast of heaven and earth. The huge golden rhinoceros burst out with an aura that directly suppressed all the beasts present. Whether it was its strength or speed, it was especially shocking. Elder She, who was surrounded by the phantom of the giant rhinoceros, aggressively rushed towards Chu Hen in the sky. "Xing Luan!" he shouted loudly. I know." Xing Luan understood tacitly, and his face revealed a touch of ruthlessness. Buzz! Buzz! Xing Luan stood up with one hand, and a steady stream of red light poured into the sky. At the same time, the flying wheels that filled the sky quickly gathered in his hand, the air waves that stirred up the sky whistled in all directions. In an instant, a flywheel that was rotating at a high speed appeared in the sky. Substantial flames burned, and the diameter of the flying wheel continued to increase. Looking from afar, Xing Luan was holding a huge wheel of wind and fire. Once one was entangled in it, there would be no corpse left. Let's see where you can escape this time. Die. Chapter 927. Rhino God Force. Ominous Wheel Calamity. The extremely majestic and ferocious aura made the sky above the capital city uneasy. Below, a giant golden rhinoceros that looked like an ancient divine beast charged at Chu Hen with the momentum of hitting the sky. Its aura soared into the sky like a mountain above. Elder Xing Luan held a mighty windfire wheel in his hand, stirring up the airflow in all directions. He dragged the Wheel of Three Calamities with one hand, and the wheel, surrounded by endless death and bloody glow, was thrown out like a divine disk. It swept up a dense destructive aura and shot toward Chu Hen. Giant rhinoceros, ominous wheel, one at the front, one at the back, one at the top and one at the bottom, they launched the most ferocious pincer attack at Chu Hen in the air. The golden beast silhouette covered the sky, and the Wheel of Three Calamities left a scorching fire pillar in the air. At that moment, Chu Hen felt like he was under the joint attack of two meteorites. The terrifying pressure came from all directions, and he could not dodge at all. Die. The Emperor of Heaven Dynasty, Xiao Zong, clenched his fists tightly, and his eyes were as sharp as arrows. Everyone else in the imperial capital had cold expressions on their faces. At this moment, the turmoil in so many provinces was finally coming to an end. Facing the joint attack of the two supreme elders, Chu Hen's handsome face was still calm. Whoosh, the space trembled slightly, and his pitch-black eyes instantly turned demonic purple. At the same time, a dense and manic black glow quickly flowed out like the mysterious flame from hell. Hiss, an extremely heavy and earth-shattering sound reverberated in the sky. The golden-colored rhinoceros that was as large as a mountain and the windfire wheel that shook the earth were like two meteorites that unexpectedly met from outer space. They firmly collided and attacked Chu Hen's location. An unprecedented energy storm swept out in the sky above the capital city. waves of dazzling true essence swept out in all directions, accompanied by the purple flames that shot up into the sky as well as the chaotic black light. The sky lost its color, and the 9 heavens dimmed. The different colored aura blended together, and the wantonly splashing light pillars were comparable to sharp swords that pierced through the air. The palaces and buildings below were smashed into smithereens. Roar! Boom! Tens of thousands of thunder rumbled in the sky, and the beasts below roared. The heart-palpitating power caused the entire imperial capital of the heaven-unified dynasty to sink into an incomparably tense atmosphere. Whether it was inside or outside the palace, countless pairs of heavy eyes stared at the center of the energy storm. Even in the vast victorious Dongzhou region, the number of people who could survive the full blow of 2 peak experts at the 6th level of the Sky Profound Realm could be counted on one hand. He's still not dead? You're courting death by barging into our territory. Bang! But at this moment, an incomparably ferocious black halo spread out like ripples on the surface of water. All the chaotic power was directly pushed back, and the young figure that was as cold as a frost blade appeared in everyone's line of sight, without much damage. What? How could this be? Everyone's faces turned pale with fright. Is this guy a monster? In less than a month's time, how could Chu Hen's cultivation increase so terrifyingly? Without any time to think, a cold sword aura suddenly spread out. Chu Hen turned into a beam of light and instantly disappeared from where he stood. In the void below, Elder Shi, who was in the shadow of a golden rhinoceros, suddenly had a change of expression. He then shouted, "Xinglun, be careful, be careful." Just as he finished speaking, an irresistible and powerful sword aura enveloped Xinglun. Xinglun was shocked. This feeling was as if he was locked in a fixed narrow area, and the invisible pressure caused the blood flow in his body to slow down. Not good. An extremely bad premonition surged in his heart, and Xinglun immediately released all of his true inner force to attack. But in the next second, a voice that was as cold as the Grim Reaper's was transmitted to his ears. Flying immortal sword, in an instant, more than a dozen cold and emotionless humanoid sword auras appeared around Xinglun. They were like ghosts, and they were incomparably sharp. Xinglun's expression changed drastically, and an unprecedented fear surged in his old eyes. Immediately after, the scene that happened to Lei Mingho in the Xian Chastity region appeared again. More than a dozen humanoid sword auras rapidly passed through Xinglun's body. Hiss hiss hiss, a sharp sound stacked up in the sky, and when the last humanoid sword aura flashed across the sky, Xinglun's old body was split into several pieces under countless shocked gazes, blood rained down, and internal organs flew everywhere. Cold, emotionless, austere, and neat. Rumble! Seeing this scene, everyone from the Heaven Dynasty felt as if a thunderbolt had exploded in their mind. Especially the emperor of a country, Xiao Zong, who was not dignified at all. His entire face was ashen. Even the supreme elder who was responsible for protecting him was killed here. Xiao Zong really did not know how to block Chu Hen's sword. Damn it! Elder Shi was furious, and his eyes were almost spitting fire. You really deserve to die, Moo. Immediately after, all of the aura of the 6th level of the Sky Profound Realm burst out from Elder Shi's body without holding back. The giant rhinoceros shadow that enveloped his body became even more solid. Its thick leather armor flickered with golden light, and the rhinoceros horn at its front was like a sharp blade that could split the heavens. Under his rage, Elder Shi did not hold back at all. The giant rhinoceros stepped on the air, stepping on golden flames, and charged towards Chu Hen with its strongest power. Chu Hen, who was above the rhinoceros, did not dodge. Instead, he dived down like a dragon diving into the sea, directly pouncing towards the opponent. If it was before, in the eyes of countless people, Chu Hen's actions were no different from courting death. However, after personally witnessing Xinglun's death, no one dared to underestimate this young man. Buzz buzz, At the same time that he dived down, Chu Hen raised his left palm. Countless beams of starlight flowed out of his body and rapidly coiled around him, rapidly converging at the center of his palm. The astonishing manic energy caused the space to become uneasy, and the extremely dense starlight energy floated around Chu Hen's body. Subsequently, the light screen of the Big Dipper pattern appeared in Chu Hen's palm. Among them, only one of the stars was relatively dim, while the other 6 stars were shining with a brilliant holy light. Buzz buzz. Controlling the heavens, shaking the 9 heavens. Endless starlight rapidly pulsed in Chu Hen's palm, and an arc-shaped light screen dragged from the front to the back. The distance between the two was instantly reduced to 0. The palm, which was comparable to a falling star, landed solidly on the giant golden rhinoceros's huge head. Star Soul 6 Critical Strike. 6 critical strikes. Bang! Along with an intense explosion, a circle of silver starlight rippled in the void, and the space distorted, as though it was about to split open. The power that gathered from the 6 star soul pearls exploded. In an instant, the terrifying power of the collision was like a meteorite crashing into a raging tsunami. The universe lost its color. The starlight that filled the sky was like a rain of sparks. The huge golden rhinoceros was like a mountain that was being battered by a river of stars. Chu Hen, with the force of pushing a mountain, crazily fell from the sky along with Elder Shi. Rumble. The earth exploded, mountains and rivers flowed, and stars fell from the sky. The moment the giant golden rhinoceros landed, the terrifying power of the 7 stars surged down, and the giant rhinoceros shadow directly exploded into pieces. Elder Shi was greatly shocked. Xiao Zong and everyone else from the Heaven Unified Dynasty felt as though it was the end of the world. Clang! A destructive power that was more terrifying than any of the previous attacks fused into the earth, and a disaster unstoppably engulfed the imperial capital of the Heaven Unified Dynasty. Elder Shi, who had lost his defense, was so enraged that his eyes almost popped out of their socket. He was directly smashed into smithereens by the violent power of the 7 stars. He did not even have the time to be shocked and angry. The wanton and violent power swept across the ground in all directions, causing the earth to split open and layers of rocks to break. Like a storm of death, the ground quickly expanded into a huge crater, and the starlight shock waves spread in all directions. Everywhere it went, all the buildings were destroyed, and all the imperial guards were killed. Flying rocks piled up, and the heaven and earth shook. Sovereign King Xiao Zong was extremely afraid, and his eyes were wide open as he hysterically shouted, "No!" The footsteps of the Grim Reaper arrived. Chapter 928. Rumble. The earth split open, and the earth exploded. The 6 star soul critical strike gathered the terrifying power of the 6 star soul pearls and struck the imperial city of the Heaven Unified Dynasty. The unstoppable storm of death was like the exploding star radiance Sunday. The ground shattered layer by layer, breaking apart inch by inch. Countless rocks surged into the air. An incomparably violent shock wave wantonly swept in all directions, and a huge sinkhole rapidly expanded. Elder Shi was instantly smashed into pieces by this powerful shockwave. And the ruler of a country, Xiao Tsang, was also smashed into pieces by the chaotic shockwave amidst a wave of fear and anguish. In an instant, the entire imperial city was filled with panicked screams. The tall and imposing city walls were like a dam that had been broken by a flood. Many people outside the city were also sent flying back, trembling with fear. Hiss! Heavens, His Majesty has died. Rumble! It was as if there was a thunderclap in the sky above the imperial capital. Dust filled the sky, and the prosperity fell. The imperial power of a generation had fallen here and now. Roar! Oh. All the beasts in the city roared towards the sky, as if they were announcing their victory, but also as if they were singing a dirge for this fallen dynasty. The sky darkened, and the earth became dark. The imperial city fell into an unprecedented chaos. The citizens in the city fled in all directions. The palace guards were killed and injured. Even the experts of the great clans in the city that relied on the imperial power could only be furious, but did not dare to encircle the thief, too terrifying, too shocking. With just a flip of his hand, the entire imperial city was razed to the ground. The man named Chu Hen had once again refreshed everyone's bottom line. A single person destroyed an entire dynasty. Moreover, this dynasty was one of the top 10 powers in the province region. There was no one who wasn't shocked, no one who wasn't angry, and no one's heart wasn't trembling. Whoosh! The cold wind whistled in the sky, and more than half of the imperial city was completely reduced to ruins. Chu Hen stood in the sky, and all the beasts surrounded him like loyal guards. Go! Without any intention of stopping, Chu Hen flashed and landed on the back of a giant eagle demon bird. The latter let out a loud cry, then flapped its wings and turned into a stream of light as it flew in one direction. Roar! Roar! The rest of the beasts also followed behind. The majestic group was like an unstoppable giant cavalry. Many of the buildings in the imperial city were trampled into nothingness. The crowd at the front did not dare to stop them. They quickly scattered and retreated, opening up a path. They could only watch as Chu Hen's figure disappeared into the horizon of the imperial city. After a short period of dead silence, the palace was filled with sobs and sorrowful cries. A dignified emperor of a dynasty was killed in his own palace. This was a great tragedy. The higher-ups of the various clans in the city all had mixed feelings in their hearts. There was anger and fear, but most of all, there was a deep sense of helplessness. They could only watch helplessly as their king perished without being able to save him in time. It wasn't that they didn't want to protect their master. They really did not have the ability. They did not even have the courage to fight to the death with Chu Hen. After all, even the two supreme elders with the strongest cultivation had died so tragically. The others were just adding to the casualties. What a joke. The dynasty is gone just like that. A clan leader of a certain clan had a bitter smile on his face. This is really unexpected. The Victory East region is really going to undergo a huge change. It's not a change of weather. It's going to be chaos. From today onwards, there will no longer be a Tian Tong dynasty among the top 10 powers in the province region. In just a few days, the victorious Dong province once again experienced a landslide and tsunami because of the fall of the Tian Tong dynasty's royal family. When this news came out, it was like a resounding slap on the faces of the sects that were chasing after Chu Hen. The world had yet to recover from the shock of Chu Hen massacring millions of people. As one of the top 10 powers, the Tian Tong dynasty had already been wiped out by Chu Hen. The emperor of the dynasty, two supreme elders at the 6th level of the Sky Profound Realm, and many experts and guards, all lost their lives at the hands of Chu Hen. This heavy blow had mercilessly kicked the Heaven Imperial dynasty out of the top 10 in the prefecture region. Perhaps it would even be destroyed in the future. Previously, the 5 million elites sent by the dynasty had just reached the borders of the 100 Nations province. They did not even have the time to cause a bloodbath when the news of the dynasty's destruction made them unable to stand steadily. It was as if Mount Tai had collapsed in front of them. The sky had darkened. Some people said that they wanted to wash the 100 Nations province in blood to avenge their king. However, with Xiao Zhang's death, the group was leaderless. Even if they washed the 100 Nations province in blood, who would be the ones with the battle merits? Who would be the commander? After this, where would they go? Similarly, what if Chu Hen came back? What would they do? Xiao Zhang's death caused the entire Tian Tong dynasty to fall into chaos. More and more people began to think about the future. Some wanted to support the crown prince to ascend the throne, some wanted to leave the dynasty to avoid Chu Hen's revenge in the future, and some wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to wield power. All kinds of contradictions were aroused. The 5 million elites did not stay in the 100 Nations province for even a day and hurriedly returned to the capital. All the feudal vassals were in danger. The ambitious ones were exposed, and the timid ones stayed far away from the capital. In less than half a month, the Tian Tong dynasty was filled with endless civil wars. Outsiders only knew that the day this superpower, which was once in the top 10, completely disappeared was not far away. The culprit, who caused all of this, what kind of shocking storm would he create next? The destruction of the Tian Tong dynasty had caused all kinds of chain reactions. The number of people chasing after Chu Hen had obviously decreased. Even the Taiqing sect had withdrawn a few orders to kill him. In the Battle of the Xian Chakra Firmament region, the Taiqing sect's losses were not small. Lu Tao, Li Fengqing, and many other genius disciples were killed. Third Elder Li Shao also died tragically. But the huge changes that happened these days forced the Taiqing sect to re-examine the current situation. After all, compared to the Tian Tong dynasty, the overall strength of the Taiqing sect was not that strong. Chu Hen's strength had already caused fear and attention that could not be ignored. However, if they just cowered like this, they would definitely lose face. After a few days of struggle, the news that the Heavenly Cloud Manor was almost annihilated spread again. The Taiqing sect finally realized that it was best not to continue provoking a ruthless character like Chu Hen. I didn't expect that old turtle Luo Tsangsong to actually lower his head. In a spacious and bright hall in the Wuang Valley, an imposing middle-aged man wearing a gorgeous robe had a cold look in his eyes. At the same time, the teacup in his hand shattered and turned into powder. The expressions of the people in front of him changed slightly, revealing respectful and fearful expressions. This middle-aged man was none other than the Valley Master of the Wuang Valley, Shintu Chongkong. "What about the Thunder Saint Palace?" Shintu Chongkong asked coldly. Reporting to the Valley Master, the Thunder Saint Palace has already issued an order to flatten Mount Kunliu tomorrow noon. Shintu Chongkong sneered. Looks like after not being able to kill Chu Hen for so long, the Thunder Saint Palace was starting to feel a little embarrassed. In for a penny, in for a pound, in for a pound. First, he would raze Mount Kunliu to the ground, and use the might of the Thunder Saint Palace to suppress Chu Hen. This was indeed the Thunder Saint Palace's style of doing things. Pass down this Valley Master's order, send a group of people to Mount Kunliu. Oh? Everyone was startled, and one of them said, "Does the Valley Master also want to?" Humph! Shintu Chongkong's face revealed a sinister look as killing intent surged in his eyes. "That bastard killed my son. If I don't take revenge for this blood debt, it will be hard for me to vent the hatred in my heart. Mount Kunliu is a place of filth, so I will definitely make sure that not even the fowls and dogs are spared." Endless hatred and killing intent filled Shintu Chongkong's entire face. Chapter 929. As the Heaven Unified Dynasty fell into the crisis of destruction, not long after, the news that the Heavenly Cloud Manor was almost annihilated also came out. Although the people in the outside world did not know why Chu Hen would seek out the Immortal Pavilion and the Heavenly Cloud Manor, these two fourth-rate sects, it was undeniable that Chu Hen's ruthlessness had already caused countless people in the entire victorious eastern state to tremble in fear. The best proof was that the Taiqing sect had completely withdrawn the order to hunt down and kill Chu Hen. However, the Thunder Saint Palace and the Innocence Valley were becoming more and more aggressive. As one of the three great sects in the prefecture, the Thunder Saint Palace would definitely not give up. After waiting for so many years, two monstrous geniuses with the Saint bloodline, Lei Mingho and Lei Jixin, appeared. Who would have thought that one would die tragically and the other would be humiliated? In the past 1,000 years, the Thunder Saint Palace had never suffered such humiliation. It could be said that as long as Chu Hen did not die, the Thunder Saint Palace would not let the matter rest. As for the Innocence Valley, it was also impossible for them to stop. The young master, Shintu Etienne, was the only son of the Valley Master, Shintu Chongkong. If they did not kill Chu-Hen, the Innocence Valley would not be able to take this lying down. However, every time Chu-Hen caused a massacre, he would be able to escape successfully. From Lei Wen, the elders of the Innocence Valley, to the two powerful supreme elders of the Heaven Dynasty, every time Chu-Hen appeared, the sects would have a new evaluation of his cultivation level. In the beginning, the people sent out by the sects could be said to be weak. For example, Lei Wen, who was the first to track down Chu-Hen, was at the 4th level of the Profound Sky Realm. After that, the 3 elders sent out by the Innocence Valley were all top figures of the upper echelons. After that, the various large sects jointly issued a bounty order, which directly made Chu-Hen become the public enemy. However, even with such a lineup, they could not do anything to Chu-Hen. His cultivation level had grown so much in just over a month that it was terrifying. From killing Lei Wen, who was at the 4th level of the Sky Profound Realm, to killing 2 Supreme Elders who were at the 6th level of the Sky Profound Realm. The world was finding it harder and harder to see through Chu-Hen. It was getting harder and harder to figure out the other party's background. In the eyes of the people of the victorious East State, Chu-Hen had become extremely mysterious. Even before the ancient desolate heaven domain opened, that name was still unknown. Was the other party not simple to begin with, or had he obtained a great opportunity in the ancient desolate heaven domain? He didn't know any of this. The order to kill Chu-Hen continued to tug at everyone's heartstrings. At the same time, Mount Kunliu was faced with a critical moment of desperation. Boom! Bang! Layer after layer of ripple-like radiance surged in the sky above Mount Kunliu. Every muffled impact caused the space to vibrate restlessly. The illusory light barrier that enveloped the sect was continuously being fiercely attacked by external forces. People of Mount Kunliu, listen up. If you obediently surrender, I'll leave your corpses intact. Otherwise, everyone's fates will be incomparably miserable. Lowly ants, come out and die. I will let you know that the price of offending my Thunder Saint Palace is not something you can bear. Mocking voices filled with disdain came from outside the sect protecting formation. The people in Mount Kunliu could be said to be both shocked and angry. They were both angry and anxious. These bullies are too much. Let's go out and fight them, a disciple cursed impulsively. Stop joking. That's the Thunder Saint Palace and the Innocence Valley. We'll die no matter how many of us go out. Then what should we do? The sect protecting formation can only last for another 5 minutes. Once the defensive formation breaks, we'll still be dead. At this moment, Mount Kunliu's senior elders, Demon-slaying Palace Master Wen Liang, and Void Palace Master Xie Wuhe hurriedly rushed out of the conference hall. All disciples, follow us to the back mountain immediately. Wen Liang said solemnly. Everyone was stunned at first, then looked at each other in confusion. Xie Wuhe immediately opened his mouth to explain. When our ancestors first established Mount Kunliu, they set up a transfer channel in the back mountain, so that when the sect faced a life and death situation, we would have a chance of survival. As the saying goes, a crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. Any sect or faction would build an escape route at the very beginning. However, this also meant that they would have to abandon Mount Kunliu's thousands of years of foundation. Let's go. Without any delay, the disciples of Mount Kunliu immediately followed Wen Liang, Xie Wuhe, and the other senior members to the back mountain. Soon, they arrived at a vast mountain stream. The mountain walls on both sides were very steep and jagged. In the center of the mountain stream, there was a lake over 1,000 meters wide. The lake water was clear and lush with aquatic plants. Although it was a beautiful scene, no one was in the mood to enjoy it at this time. Old Xie, Demon-slaying Hall Master Wen Liang shouted in a low voice. Xie Wuhe understood tacitly and nodded his head. Buzz, as soon as he finished speaking, the 2 of them flew up, one on the left and one on the right, and flew towards the east and west sides of the lake respectively. A vast and surging true origin energy was released from the 2 of them. The two of them made a series of complicated hand seals in quick succession. The space fluctuated rhythmically, and ripples appeared on the surface of the lake below. When the last hand sign was completed, the two of them pointed one hand down at the same time and firmly slapped the air. Buzz, in an instant, countless unfathomable talisman markings actually spread out on the surface of the water below. The crisscrossing bright light patterns were like interweaving spiritual vines, as if an ancient formation that had been dormant for many years had been activated. Tens of thousands of bright light rays were released from the surface of the water. Whoosh! Waves piled up, and a huge whirlpool immediately formed under the water. Under the surprised gazes of the disciples of Mount Kunliu, a transportation tunnel with a diameter of 100 meters immediately appeared inside the whirlpool. Inside the pitch-black tunnel, there was a flickering light. It was like a mysterious tunnel that led to another space. Bang! Bang! Heavy sounds of impact could be heard coming from the direction they came from. These reverberations were like a heavy hammer pounding on the hearts of everyone on Mount Kunliu. Damn it! When Liang cursed in a deep voice. Xie Wuhe hurriedly signaled the crowd to leave. Quick, everyone enter the underwater transportation tunnel. Hall Master, you guys leave first. A few hot-blooded disciples hurriedly said. Don't talk nonsense, there's not much time. Looking at Wen Liang and Xie Wuhe's serious expressions, everyone's eyes unconsciously turned red. They immediately gritted their teeth and jumped into the water whirlpool. Everyone was orderly, like a school of fish entering the sea, and in the blink of an eye, disappeared into the transportation tunnel. Boom! Almost at the same time, an unprecedented heavy sound reverberated in the sky above the area behind them, resounding through the sky. When Liang and Xie Wuhe's faces suddenly turned pale. A strong sense of danger enveloped them. Chapter 930. Bang! An earth-shattering sound came from the area in front of the sect. When Liang, Xie Wuhe, and the rest of Mount Kunliu's disciples paled as a strong sense of danger enveloped them. Damn it! The sect's defensive formation had been broken. What should we do? The Mount Kunliu's disciples were flustered. Demon Slayer Palace Master Wen Liang waved his hand, frowned, and said in a deep voice, "You don't have to worry about it, just evacuate." After he finished speaking, he exchanged a glance with Xie Wuhe, the Void Temple Master, and the two of them nodded deeply. A solemn and stirring feeling arose from the two of them. "Old Xie, you should leave too. I alone am enough," Wen Liang said with his head held high. Eh? Xie Wuhe sneered, a hint of contempt appearing at the corner of his mouth. "I say, Wen Liang, you think too highly of yourself. If you were alone, I'm afraid you'd be killed in a single move by the people from Thunder Saint Palace." How good can you be? You'll only hinder me if you're by my side." Even though they spoke in a mocking tone, there was no hint of disdain. As they listened to the conversation between the two, the hearts of the elders and disciples of Mount Kunliu shuddered involuntarily. It was obvious that Xie Wuhe and Wen Liang had decided to delay the Thunder Saint Palace and Wuang Valley to buy some time for them to evacuate. "Palace Master, you can't." An elder hurriedly dissuaded. Before the elder could finish, Wen Liang raised his hand and stopped him. "Don't say any more. We're facing a great enemy. How can we not step forward bravely? As long as we protect these juniors, there's hope for Mount Kunliu's future. This is also the only thing we can do for Sect Master Gongyang." Then, Wen Liang turned to Xie Wuhe and said, "Old Xie, let's go." Xie Wuhe nodded solemnly and said to the elders, "Focus on the big picture." Palace Master, Wen Liang and Xie Wuhe flew away, turning into a stream of light as they flew in the direction they came from. All the elders in the upper echelon were heartbroken. But, as Xie Wuhe said, in front of a great enemy, everything had to be based on the overall situation. The thousands of young disciples of Mount Kunliu were the big picture. As long as they were protected, there would be hope for the sect to rise again. Swish! Xie Wuhe and Wen Liang landed on the peak of a precipitous mountain. "We will wait for them here." Wen Liang looked up and said in a deep tone. Xie Wuhe smiled lightly. Are you nervous? Yeah. I'm really nervous. Wen Liang did not hide it. Just the 3 words, Thunder Saint Palace, was enough to make countless people in the Eastern Victory State feel fear and respect. Even so, there was no fear on Wen Liang's face. As the Devil Slaughter Palace Master, he had his own pride. The wait seemed to be extremely long at this moment. Especially the mentality of waiting for death. The longer it lasted, the more uneasy it would be. However, what surprised the 2 of them was that the people from Thunder Saint Palace and Innocence Valley, who should have caught up to them a long time ago, didn't show up even after 5 minutes had passed. What's going on? Xie Wuhe frowned slightly and looked at Wen Liang. Wen Liang's face was also filled with confusion. Looking from afar, the entire Mount Kunliu was terrifyingly quiet. Let's go back and take a look. After a short moment of hesitation, the 2 of them returned to the sect. The huge Mount Kunliu was empty. The sect's defensive formation had indeed been broken. However, what was puzzling was that the enemies who had been clamoring outside the mountain gate were nowhere to be seen. Let's go down the mountain. Wen Liang's eyes darkened. He crossed the main peak with Xie Wuhe and arrived at the stone stairway leading to the foot of the mountain. Then, the 2 of them stopped abruptly, and their pupils shrank sharply. This! Wen Liang clenched his fists tightly. He was so shocked that he couldn't speak. There was a faint smell of blood in the air. In front of the 2 of them were dozens of corpses lying in a pool of blood. The scene was too horrible to look at. Severed limbs were scattered everywhere. How could this be? Even though Wen Liang and Xie Wuhe had been in the position of palace master for many years and were used to great storms, the scene in front of them still made them tremble with fear. Among the dozens of people killed were a few elders from Thunder Saint Palace and Innocence Valley. With a glance, Xie Wuhe could tell that Wen Liang and Xie Wuhe knew quite a few of them. These people were quite famous in the entire province. But now, all of them were lying on the steps of the Mount Kunliu sect with their eyes wide open. The sudden turn of events really caught everyone off guard. The ground was covered with corpses. It was a one-sided massacre. They didn't even disturb the people of Mount Kunliu. By the time they rushed over, the battle was already over. The entire process was silent. This could only have happened if the perpetrator's cultivation was too much higher than theirs. It's him. Xie Wuhe and Wen Liang looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Other than Chu Hen and Gong Yangyu, they couldn't think of anyone else. However, Gong Yangyu's personality was more gentle, and he definitely wouldn't be so ruthless. The people who were killed in front of him looked like animals that had been tortured to death. It was hard to believe that the ordinary youth who had just arrived would one day make people feel so frightened. Whoosh! At this moment, the sound of rushing wind could be heard from the foot of the mountain. Wen Liang and Wen Liang were first shocked, then their eyelids twitched as they exclaimed in unison, "Flying Immortal Temple Master!" The newcomer was none other than the Flying Immortal Temple Master, Qi Hanyu. A wave of cold air stacked up as Qi Hanyu landed in front of the 2 in a flash. Before she could ask about the sex situation, she was stunned by the scene in front of her. This is? Qi Hanyu frowned as she looked at the people who had been killed. From Wen Liang and Wen Liang's expressions, she immediately guessed what had happened. Chu Hen's cultivation has increased again, Qi Hanyu murmured. However, this wasn't a good thing, because Chu Hen's methods of killing were becoming more and more ruthless. To Chu Hen, these people who were killed did not seem to be humans. They were like livestock that had no value at all. Killing them was killing them. She could even feel that when Chu Hen killed them, he didn't even blink. Such a person was no different from a devil. Are the others all right? Qi Hanyu took a moment to recover from her shock before replying. We've already sent them away using the teleportation passage at the back of the mountain, Xie Wuhe replied. Qi Hanyu nodded in relief. This was within her expectations, but she didn't expect Chu Hen to appear here. Although she was shocked by Chu Hen's methods of killing, at least he cared about Mount Kunliu. Why are you alone? Where's the sect master? Where is he? When Liang asked. Yes, Gong Yongyu is now. Before he could finish his words, a dozen or so figures were rushing over to this side. It's the flying immortal temple master and the rest. Nong Chi's voice was the first to be heard. Temple master, where's Chu Hen? Did he come here? What happened here? Lung Lingyan, Danjun, Hua Shui, and the rest asked a series of questions. Looking at the messy corpses on the ground, then looking at the three neatly dressed people, everyone's faces were filled with shock. These people were killed by Chu Hen? Hauzi asked with a frown. In these days of searching for Chu Hen's whereabouts, they had already seen this scene countless times. The Immortal Pavilion, the imperial city of the Tiantong dynasty, and the Heavenly Cloud Manor, based on Long Xuanxuang's understanding of Chu Hen, everyone had been speculating about Chu Hen's next move. They followed behind him without stopping, but they were always one step behind Chu Hen. Nongqi, try to sense Chu Hen's aura, Lung Lingyan said. However, Nongqi shook her head. I've been trying to sense him since the beginning, but I can't find his whereabouts. They were one step too late again. Everyone was mentally and physically exhausted. Too tired. It really made them feel like breaking down. But there was no other way. At times like this, they couldn't give up on Chu Hen, just like Chu Hen, even though he had become the world's public enemy. He still protected the 100-nation state and Mount Kunli. Where would Chu Hen go next? Chapter 931. Night fell and darkness spread to every corner of the world. The chaos in the victorious East State continued. The successive disturbances made all the sects and factions a little numb. Even some of the onlookers who were not afraid of things getting out of hand also began to hope that this matter would end as soon as possible. No one would have thought that the little Chu Hen from back then would be able to turn the entire province upside down at this very moment. The storm was getting stronger and stronger, but there seemed to be no signs of it stopping. It was as if an even more terrifying storm was yet to come. It was close to dawn. Silence enveloped everything. Innocence Valley. Beautiful and majestic. Luxurious buildings and palaces exuded a unique and mysterious aura under the slightly intoxicating light of the morning sun. Innocence Valley's terrain was precipitous, and it had unique geographical advantages. Not only was it rich in spirit qi, but it was also easy to defend and hard to attack. Many other sects and factions were very envious of this blessed land. A dozen patrolling disciples walked back and forth at the entrance of the valley from time to time. They walked with heavy footsteps, swinging the cold spears in their hands. They were sharp and cold. Meanwhile, at the peak of another mountain shrouded in darkness, a ghostly figure stood quietly at the edge of the cliff, motionless like a boulder. No one knew when he arrived here. He just stood there. In the darkness, a pair of demonic eyes flashed with a demonic purple light. Dawn broke, and the darkness faded. Day arrived as expected. When the first ray of sunlight passed through the thick clouds and shone on the ground, everyone's vigilance was lowered. The arrival of light meant that another peaceful night had passed. However, just as the guards of Innocence Valley were yawning and stretching, a ferocious beast's roar reverberated throughout the valley. Roar, the ground shook and then smoke rose from all directions. A huge beast appeared out of nowhere in all directions of Innocence Valley. What's going on? The people of Innocence Valley, who had just managed to relax, immediately turned pale with fright. Before they could react to what was happening, a 300-meter-long violent bear covered in thick rock armor charged into the entrance of Innocence Valley like a giant. Oh my God! It's a 5th-level heavenly beast, a heavy rock wild bear. 5th-level heavenly beast. It was a terrifying existence comparable to a human at the 5th rank of the sky profound realm. Boom! The enormous giant rock wild bear's entire body was as hard as a mountain. With a terrifying and barbaric charge, it instantly caused the defensive city gate at the entrance of the valley to collapse, causing more than half of it to collapse. Miserable and panicked cries rang out incessantly. All the disciples of Innocence Valley were crushed into minced meat under the huge claws of the giant rock wild bear. Chaos arrived with the appearance of dawn. Everyone in Wuwang Valley was startled awake. One by one, figures hurriedly flew out. "What's with all the noise, Great Elder? There's a heavenly beast attack." A flustered disciple quickly replied. "Heavenly beast attack?" The Great Elder of Honesty Valley was an old man in his 60s. His expression was dark, and his narrow triangular eyes shone with a cold light like that of a venomous snake. "Evil creature! How dare you behave atrociously in my Innocence Valley? Are you tired of living?" As soon as he finished speaking, his figure moved, turning into a beam of light as he charged towards the giant rock wild bear that was wreaking havoc in the surroundings. "Who?" The giant rock berserk bear let out a low, muffled sound from its throat. Its ferocious aura soared into the sky as it raised its huge claws and attacked the light shadow that was attacking it. Bang! The fierce and heavy energies collided head-on, and a chaotic airwave-like pattern erupted between heaven and earth. The heavy rock wild bear was directly shaken to the point of retreating more than a dozen steps, being forced back by the human before him. Instantly enraged the furious bear. The surging demonic power piled up, and the heavy rock wild bear flew into a rage, stirring up a monstrous rage and ferocity. Its huge claw turned into a fist, and it smashed down on the head of the Great Elder of Wuwang Valley again. Even though Wuwang Valley's Great Elder had reached the 6th level of the profound heaven realm, he still couldn't defeat Wuwang Valley. However, when facing an incomparably violent, heavenly beast like the heavy rock wild bear, he still had to avoid its sharp edge. His body flashed backwards, and the berserk bear smashed fiercely into the ground. The ground instantly split open, and rocks crumbled and stacked together. A huge pit appeared on the ground. "This beast's brute strength is too strong, set up a formation to trap it," another senior elder shouted. "Yes." Immediately, more than a dozen swift and fierce figures rushed towards the heavy rock wild bear from different directions. Then, they threw out thick and heavy chains to wrap around the beast's limbs and neck. It was an extremely shocking scene, like a demon being trapped. However, right after that, a mountain peak in the west of Wuwang Valley was flipped open again. Amidst the chaotic rain of rubble, another huge creature actually crawled out from the ground. This huge creature was also 100 meters long, and it looked like a beetle. It carried a heavy snail shell on its back, and its head was very ferocious. Its huge beak was like a blooming man-eating flower. "Oh no, another heavenly beast! This is a level 4 heavenly beast, the Earth Ghost King." A screech. Before they could recover from the shock, a vast and surging airwave swept up in the southern sky once again. The sound of thunder rumbled, and a huge black shadow covered the sky, shaking the 9 heavens. A black-feathered eagle with a wingspan of nearly 1,000 meters and 3 heads glided across the sky, breaking through the wind to attack. What? This is a black cloud eagle. Damn it, this is a level 6 heavenly beast. A trembling voice came from the mouth of one of Wuwang Valley's disciples. Roar. Screech. Then, something even more shocking happened. One after another, ferocious demonic beasts crawled out of Wuwang Valley, toppling mountains and toppling forests. There was a giant tiger with wings on its back, a snow leopard with lightning circling around its body, and a bloodthirsty giant spider with a ferocious face. In an instant, hundreds of terrifying demonic beasts charged into Wuwang Valley. Without the slightest bit of mercy, they began a frenzied massacre of the crowd. Swish, 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 swish. Then, small mounds rose from the ground, and densely packed red fire ants crawled out. They rushed forward and bit the crowd. Ah, the crowd screamed in agony and panic. Accompanied by a buzzing noise, the swarm of blood-blade mantises swarmed over like a swarm of locusts. A harvest feast was quietly underway. Damn it! The Grand Elder of Wuwang Valley was both shocked and angry, and he was extremely anxious. Such a huge group of beasts was simply a disaster. Just the few terrifying heavenly beasts were already difficult enough to resist, let alone the hundreds of beast emperors and the swarm of fire ants and blood-blade mantises that took advantage of the chaos to attack. This wasn't a beast attack at all. Someone had purposely summoned them here. Roar! The heavy rock wild bear erupted with a majestic aura. It swung its body fiercely, and the chains wrapped around its body spun rapidly like iron whips, lashing out at the crowd around it. Everyone who was hit by the high-speed spinning chains exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Screech! The black cloud eagle flew like a bolt of lightning, like a shooting star. It transformed into a broad shadow blade and fell from the sky. A mountain ridge was split in half, and a huge ravine appeared on the ground. Countless people in Wuang Valley died on the spot as if they were hit by a divine blade that could tear through the air. Their limbs flew everywhere. There was no doubt that Wuang Valley was defenseless. The massacre quickly turned into a one-sided situation. Bastards! The Grand Elder of Wuang Valley's eyes turned cold. After scanning the surroundings, his gaze finally fell on a steep cliff. At the edge of the cliff, a young figure quietly watched the merciless massacre in front of him. Chapter 932. It really is you, you damned little bastard. You still dare to come here? I'll make sure you won't be able to leave today. The Grand Elder of Wuang Valley immediately discovered Chu Hen, who was calmly watching the merciless slaughter in front of him, on top of a precipice of a mountain range, calmly looking at the bloody massacre. Chu Hen commanded the beasts, as if he was the king of the world. When a king was angry, blood flowed like rivers, and corpses littered the ground. The tens of thousands of people in the Valley of Innocence were like ants. New grudges and old grudges. Since it had reached a point where it couldn't be resolved, then he would slaughter his entire clan. Bastard, why aren't you stopping? In his rage, the First Elder unleashed a monstrous killing aura and charged at Chu Hen. His powerful aura pressed down like a mountain. His hands moved like willows, and a shocking amount of true essence spun back and forth between his palms and arms. Buzz, a violent wind blew and the world shook. The space where Chu Hen was at was instantly swept up with a rapidly rotating spiral airflow. The extremely tearing force of the spiral airflow was like tens of thousands of flying swords. The mountain peaks and stone walls under Chu Hen's feet were instantly crushed into pieces, rolling stones and thunder rumbled, and Chu Hen felt as if he had fallen into the eye of a storm. Humph, ignorant thing. Don't think that just because you use these beasts to destroy the heavenly empire, you have the right to behave atrociously in the Valley of Innocence. The First Elder swung his arms, and the spiral current around Chu Hen became even more terrifying and powerful. The area of the storm rapidly shrank, and the space around Chu Hen shrank as well. Shatter! The First Elder roared. Humph! As soon as the First Elder finished speaking, Chu Hen's eyes widened, and a shocking, majestic sword aura suddenly burst out. Whoosh! After that, it immediately transformed into a sharp human-shaped sword chi that vanished on the spot. Its momentum was like a shocking rainbow, and it was swift like a bolt of lightning as it forcefully broke open a chasm in the incomparably violent spiraling airflow. Bang! Waves of energy flew everywhere, and the sword aura wreaked havoc. A vast and mighty flow of true essence was like an exploding nebula, blotting out the heavens and covering the earth as it surged and splashed in all directions. What? The head elder's pupils shrank to the size of a needle. He stared wide-eyed at the human-shaped sword aura that resembled a shadow blade charging at him. Bang! The powerful sword chi struck the man's body, and the flesh on his chest split open. A wound so deep that his bones could be seen appeared, and it reached his internal organs. It stretched from his right shoulder to his left rib, blood splattered everywhere, and the Great Elder of Innocence Valley let out a miserable cry. He covered his wound with one hand as he quickly retreated. Protect Great Elder! Hurry up! A few experts from Innocence Valley panicked and hurriedly flew up to block Chu Hen's path. The dignified Grand Elder couldn't even withstand a single strike of my sword. Humph! How laughable! Chu Hen stood in the air, the tip of his sword pointed at him. The expressions of everyone in Wuang Valley changed again and again. They were both shocked and angry. Hua! At this moment, a majestic aura filled the sky. Insolent thief, don't be so arrogant here. His thunderous voice shook the heavens, and everyone's eyes lit up. Valley Master. Roar! Roar! Sensing the powerful aura released by the newcomer, the many demonic beasts in the valley roared at the sky, emitting roars that resounded through the sky. Who else could it be but the leader of Wuang Valley, Shintu Changkong? You bastard, you killed my son, Tian Yi. Today, I will make you suffer in this world to vent my hatred. Shintu Changkong's deep voice rang out from different directions. Illusory sky realm. Buzz, buzz, in an instant, an endless curtain of darkness spilled towards the area where Chu Hen was. The 9 heavens dimmed, and the earth lost its color. It was as if he had fallen into an endless abyss of darkness. Everyone in Wuang Valley, as well as all the demons, disappeared from sight. It was as if Chu Hen had arrived in another world of nothingness. An illusion, huh? Chu Hen muttered to himself. Your arrogance has impressed me, Shintu Changkong said. Buzz! Layer after layer of ripples appeared in the air. Just as he finished speaking, a middle-aged man dressed in luxurious clothes appeared a few meters behind Chu Hen. Then, the figure split into 2, 2 into 4, and 4 into 8 in the blink of an eye. Dozens of identical figures appeared in all directions around Chu Hen. Not a bad bloodline boundary power. Chu Hen's face was calm as he stood where he was. He said faintly, It's a pity. I stole someone else's illusory sky mystic body. It was one of the top bloodline boundaries in the mystic body. It was a combination of illusion and martial arts, complementing each other. It could be said to be ever-changing, making it hard to distinguish between real and fake. However, everyone knew that Wuang Valley's Shintu family clan possessed the wedding dress mystic body. This body did not have a strong increase in strength, but its greatest ability was to snatch other people's bloodline boundaries for one's own use. Back then, Shintu Changkong had obtained this illusory sky mystic body, which allowed him to rule over an area and make Wuang Valley stronger. As for Shintu Etian, who had been killed by Chu Hen in the Xian Kshetra sky region, his ambition was even greater. What he wanted was Yi Yao's evolved Tai Chi holy body. I have to say, you father and son really make me hate you, Chu Hen said in a light voice. Humph, you're about to die, yet you still dare to boast here. Next, I'll let you know what despair is. Whoosh! Just as he finished speaking, a thick aura of death attacked Chu Hen. Dozens of Shintu Changkongs burst out with a mountainous aura at the same time. Each of them flipped their palms and attacked Chu Hen. In the dark space, shadows flashed and quintessential essence stacked up. A surging power that could topple mountains and overturn seas was unleashed. There was a kind of transcendent aura that seemed like it wanted to kill Chu Hen in one strike. Chu Hen did not move at all. He did not even move his feet in the face of the dozens of powerful figures that were attacking him fiercely. His indifferent and deep voice was filled with mockery and disdain. Unfortunately, the bloodline physique you stole is useless against me. Useless, boom. In an instant, an invisible spatial fluctuation spread out in all directions with Chu Hen at the center. In the next second, the dozens of powerful figures that were charging from all directions suddenly disappeared without a trace. In the area in front of Chu Hen, only Shintu Changkong was left. He was shocked as if he had seen the most terrifying scene in the world. In the dark space, it was as if he had fallen into a nightmare. What appeared in front of Shintu Changkong was a pair of purple eyes that were flickering in the darkness, shock, fear, and disbelief. At this moment, the person who dominated the darkness was no longer Shintu Changkong. In an instant, he had fallen into an ice cellar. Chu Hen's figure seemed to have become hard to surpass. Other than his demon-like demonic and charming eyes, there was also a layer of strange black shadow floating behind him, the shadow stuck closely to Chu Hen's back, emitting a mysterious and dangerous aura. Despair. It was indeed despair. However, the person who was in despair was not Chu Hen. You're a demon. Shintu Changkong's voice was trembling. Buzz. Chapter 933. Bang! Endless violent turbulence instantly erupted like a torrent. The dark space that shrouded the sky was forcibly torn apart by the violent and devastating purple flames. The purple flame was like a blossoming flower, rising and surging into the sky. Everyone in Wuang Valley frowned as they stared fixedly at the sky. The darkness receded, and the purple flames filled the sky. When everyone saw the figure that stood proudly beneath the sky like a young king, all of their eyes instantly opened wide, and they were extremely astounded. He's still alive. How is this possible? Where's the Valley Master? Did he lose? Amidst the disbelieving and panicked gazes, a figure wrapped in purple flames slid out of the sea of flames. No, it's impossible, absolutely impossible. The great elder's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. It was as if he had just witnessed the most terrifying thing in the world. The other people in Innocence Valley were equally shocked. Their hearts trembled, and they felt as if even their souls were trembling. Could that person be the Valley Master, Shintu Changkong? The answer was obvious. There were only two people in that dark space earlier. One was Chu Hen, and the other was Shintu Changkong. Now Chu Hen had appeared before everyone's eyes unscathed. As such, there was no need to guess who the other person was. Valley Master. A few senior elders of Innocence Valley stepped into the sky one after another, trying to rescue him. But it was too late. The aura of the figure shrouded in the demonic flames was almost completely gone. Buzz. Without much struggle, the purple flames became extremely domineering. The figure became smaller and smaller, and in the blink of an eye, it was burned to ashes. The Valley Master of Innocence Valley, Shintu Changkong, was dead. Boom! In an instant, everyone in Wuang Valley felt their vision darken. It was as if the sky had fallen down on them. The dust settled, and dark clouds filled the sky. The last line of defense collapsed quietly. What followed was only the merciless slaughter of the demon beasts. Roar! Screech! The unstoppable demonic beast was comparable to a sword of the Grim Reaper that went straight for the vital points. It trampled the mountain peaks and rushed into the crowd, biting and slamming madly. The sixth-level heavenly beast, Black Cloud Condor, was known for its astonishing might, transforming into the sky-splitting shadow wings. Wherever it went, everything was sliced into pieces. The rank 5 Beast Emperor, the heavy rock wild bear, was even more violent. Wherever its huge claws trampled, everything was razed to the ground and turned into ruins. One by one, Honesty Valley's disciples fell to the beast's sharp teeth and claws. The roars of the demon beasts and the shrill screams interweaved into a magnificent piece of music. It's over. Wuang Valley's great elder's face was drained of blood. His eyelids drooped and his face was ashen. Thousands of years of foundation was destroyed in a day. Compared to the recent upheaval of the Heaven Unified Empire, Wuang Valley was truly uprooted and massacred. It's all over. The great elder lifted his head helplessly and looked at the figure hovering in the air. Everything he had was thanks to this person. He had thought that he had angered Wuang Valley by killing Shintu Etian. However, he had never expected that Shintu Etian would provoke him and bring about the destruction of Wuang Valley. The moment Shintu Changkong was burned to ashes, Wuang Valley was completely finished. Roar! A sword tiger and a winged lion pounced on the great elder of Wuang Valley. They opened their mouths, which reeked of blood, at the same time. A short, hurried scream rang out, and the old man's body was immediately torn to pieces. The massacre continued. Everyone scattered and fled. Dazzling red spread to every corner of Wuang Valley. After an unknown amount of time, the chaotic Wuang Valley finally returned to peace. However, it was a completely different scene. Corpses littered the ground, and blood flowed like a river. It was originally a blessed land that was filled with spiritual energy. However, in less than a morning, it had been reduced to an incomparably tragic Azura hell. Broken bones and corpses could be seen everywhere. The demonic beasts circled and crouched in the valley, whimpering softly. It was as if they were announcing their victory, but also as if they were singing a dirge. It was a true bloodbath. They had completely killed everyone. In comparison, the Heaven dynasty had only flattened the imperial city. There were still many vassals and ministers, but they had become a third or fourth-rate power. As for Wuang Valley, it didn't even have a chance to make a comeback. From now on, there would be no more Wuang Valley in the victorious Dongxing Prefecture. One of the top 10 powers would be gone once again. The cold wind that blew in their faces carried a hint of blood. Chu Hen looked down at the ground in front of him, looking down on everything. His aura was cold and sinister, making him feel like a frosty blade. It was cold and frightening. Enough is enough. At that moment, a strange power surged out of his body. The sacred winged heavenly flame bird's low voice was filled with helplessness and apology. Since leaving the ancient desolate heaven region, this was the first time it had communicated with Chu Hen. This storm of slaughter was endless. There were more than 1 million people who had died at Chu Hen's hands. Even though the sacred winged heavenly flame bird knew that Chu Hen was in great pain after losing Luo Mengchong, it knew that if this continued, it would eventually destroy him. Chu Hen looked up and replied indifferently, "I can't stop it anymore. I'm very sorry about her." The sacred winged heavenly flame bird sighed. When it had collected the Xian Xia divine lightning heart, it hadn't sensed Lei Mingho hiding in the dark. If it had discovered Lei Mingho before that, it might have been able to avoid the tragedy. In the sacred winged heavenly flame bird's opinion, this was its mistake. Chu Hen didn't say anything. He just looked ahead quietly. "Let go," the sacred winged heavenly flame bird advised again. "The killing power in your body is almost unable to suppress even the bloodline power of your demonic pupil sacred body." It didn't continue. Over 1 million people were killed. Qi Tian's command. Heretic God's power. The more he killed, the stronger the heretic God's power would be. However, the price he had to pay was the endless expansion of his inner demon. Once he was controlled by the inner demon, he would become a slave of the heretic God and never be able to turn back. "Thank you." A faint ripple appeared in Chu Hen's eyes. At this time, he was still able to hear some words of concern. It touched his heart a little, however, it was only a little. "I can't turn back anymore." It was meaningful. It was extremely resolute. Chu Hen raised his head. His eyes were filled with many emotions as he looked into the sky. Screech, high up in the sky, a falcon pierced through the clouds. Chu Hen's gaze pierced through the layers of white clouds and reached the vast blue sky. It was as if there was a giant that stood at the top of the pyramid of the Eastern Victory State. "You're the only one left in the Thunder Saint Palace. I, Chu Hen, am coming." Chapter 934. This is bad, this is bad. Innocence Valley was massacred. The entire sect was massacred without exception. The culprit has been confirmed to be Chu Hen. After Heaven's Unity Dynasty, another top 10 faction has fallen. A loud voice spread from one end of the street to the other. The tea houses, restaurants, and stalls on both sides of the street poked their heads out, their faces filled with shock. Innocence Valley had been annihilated. This piece of news was shocking, but it seemed reasonable as well. However, what made people shudder was the ice-cold words "slaughtered to the last man" and "bloodbath" that pierced the eardrums of everyone present. Top 10 factions. They were existences that stood at the top of the pyramid in the Victory Dong Prefecture. But in just over a month, 2 of them had been wiped out for the first time. The people of the various factions in the prefecture felt that they were so weak and unable to withstand a single blow. Massacre after massacre, the moment he attacked, he slaughtered entire sects. The people's initial mentality of watching a good show gradually turned into fear and unease. Chu Hen's appearance had brought a huge disaster to the Victory Dong Prefecture. Even top factions like Heaven's Unity Dynasty and Innocence Valley had been destroyed with a flip of his hand. What difference was there between the other ordinary sects and clans and ants in Chu Hen's eyes? Taiching sect. The atmosphere in the conference hall was very heavy. The faces of the upper echelons still had a trace of fear that had yet to completely fade. Sect Master Luo Tsangsong, who was sitting on the wide chair that represented the highest authority, seemed to be somewhat restless. Luo Tsangsong was not very old. He looked to be in his 40s. While he was shocked, Luo Tsangsong was also secretly rejoicing. It seemed that withdrawing the order to kill Chu Hen was a very wise choice. Otherwise, it would have been his Taiching sect that had been massacred. Do you guys think that Chu Hen's next target will be our Taiching sect? A deep and fearful voice came from the mouth of one of the elders. The voice was not loud, but it made the hearts of everyone in the hall tighten. Luo Tsangsong's frown, which had yet to relax, immediately deepened. I don't think so, another elder replied. His tone was clearly lacking in confidence. We've already revoked the order to hunt him down. We won't pursue the matter of him killing Elder Li Shao and many of our disciples. What else does he want? What else do you want? Many people shook their heads and smiled bitterly. Now, it was not that they wanted to do anything to Chu Hen, but what Chu Hen would do to them next. Back then, he was just a nobody, but now, he had the power to challenge a top sect alone. To say that the Taiching sect was not panicking, absolutely no one would believe it. But then again, Chu Hen's fate was already decided. Because there was still the Thunder Saint Palace. No matter how powerful Chu Hen was in the eyes of the world, it was impossible for him to defeat the colossus that was the Thunder Saint Palace. The Great Clear sect was afraid that before the Thunder Saint Palace could kill Chu Hen, they would follow in the footsteps of the Heaven Imperial Dynasty, and without Wang Valley. Immediately recall all the disciples who went out, seal off the sect, and defend with all our might. After a long period of silence, Luo Tsangsong finally gave this order. All the elders nodded. In the current situation, it seemed that biding their time was the wisest choice. At this moment, they could only hope that Chu Hen would be killed by the Thunder Saint Palace before attacking the Great Clear sect. The stars are dim, the prefecture will fall into chaos. A towering mountain stood at the peak of all the mountains, like a divine blade that could shake the heavens. At the top of the mountain, under an ancient pine tree, an old man wearing a long white robe raised his head to look at the stars in the night sky. The old man had silver hair and a white beard, and he had the air of an otherworldly immortal. His eyes were cloudy, and his entire body gave off the extraordinary aura of an otherworldly master. Everything in the world served as a foil to him. Under the millions of stars, he was like a bright moon that descended to the world. This was a temperament that had existed since time immemorial. He retracted his gaze and sighed softly. The prefecture will fall into chaos. What should my thousand-world sect do? The old man muttered to himself. On the other side of the prefecture, neon lights flashed, and brilliant lights overflowed. Luxurious and resplendent palaces were built on the towering peaks of the mountains. At the top of the mountain, above the palace, a huge stone stood erect like a sword. On the stone tablet there were 3 words, Jihua Palace. The strokes were bold and vigorous, and the strokes were unparalleled. Is the palace master inside? I have something to report. Outside the dazzling palace, a figure hurriedly stepped on the steps outside the door. A few guards with extraordinary bearings stopped him and replied in an unquestionable tone, "The palace master is in closed-door cultivation. The temple master is currently in closed-door cultivation. All matters will be handled by the elders group of the North Flower Palace. I believe you know this, right?" The guard replied in a deep voice. "The situation is urgent. I must ask the palace master," the person insisted. "Oh!" The guard was slightly surprised. If it was under normal circumstances, no one would dare to disturb the palace master at this time. However, when he saw the other person's solemn expression, he immediately asked in confusion, "What's so urgent? Could it be that the victorious East State has been turned upside down?" It has indeed been turned upside down. After the Heaven dynasty, the entire Innocence Valley was slaughtered. 2 of the top 10 forces have already been eliminated. The blood of more than 1 million people has been stained by Chu-Hen alone. A slight ripple appeared in the darkness. Inside the palace, under the dim light, a figure sitting on a stone throne suddenly opened his eyes. The sharp light in his eyes revealed his supreme majesty. If the destruction of the heavenly imperial dynasty was just a coincidence, then the fall of Wuwang Valley was a direct declaration of disaster. The destruction of 2 first-rate forces set off a huge chain reaction in the prefecture. The Thousand Worlds sect and the Zhihua Palace were both alarmed. Meanwhile, the Taiqing sect, Wind and Cloud Pavilion, Sky Bamboo Peak, and other sects also recalled their disciples and completely sealed their sections. This was unprecedented. The storm set off by Chu-Hen had already swept through the entire prefecture. In particular, the clans and forces that had sent people to hunt down Chu-Hen all over the place acted as if they were facing a great enemy. All of them hid in their homes, not daring to come out for a moment. The undercurrents in the victorious East State were surging. Various passers-by were also secretly searching for traces of Chu-Hen, but no one dared to be too loud. After the complete disappearance of the Innocence Valley, who would be next? In an instant, everyone's attention shifted to another powerful force, the Thunder Saint Palace. Perhaps the most terrifying storm was about to arrive. Chapter 935. The storm that engulfed the victorious East Prefecture grew more and more violent. In less than 2 months after the ancient desolate Heaven domain ended, more than 1 million people died in Chu-Hen's hands. 2 of the top 10 factions in the prefecture perished. However, all of these turbulences seemed to be merely the prelude to an even more terrifying hurricane that was about to arrive. From flattening the imperial capital of the Heaven United dynasty to bathing the valley in blood, it seemed more like a provocation to the supreme dignity. Thunder Saint Palace, one of the 3 major factions in the prefecture. In the vast victorious East Prefecture, only the Thousand Worlds sect and the Palace of Zhihua could be mentioned in the same breath. To any sect or faction in the prefecture, the 3 major factions were colossal existences. For thousands of years, no one in the prefecture could shake their position. Today, Chu-Hen, who was being hunted by all the major sects, wiped out his enemies one by one with lightning speed. Finally, only the Thunder Saint Palace was left. Provocation? Demonstration? Or perhaps it was just pure hatred. Chu-Hen used this cruel and merciless method to complete his revenge on all the major factions. The blood of 1 million people was not enough to send off a beauty. At this point, whether it was Chu-Hen or the Thunder Saint Palace, there was no turning back. They wouldn't rest until they were dead. The beautiful mountains and rivers stood tall in the dense spirit fog. The mountain ridges were like ancient dragons crawling on the ground. Faint, golden clouds floated among the mountains. The mountains and rivers were the same color, and the white cranes and colorful clouds reflected off each other. Even in the entire eastern continent, such an abundant spirit vein was a precious land that was rarely seen. In this paradise of beautiful mountains and pleasant scenery, there were many magnificent palaces and palaces built one after another. Some buildings towered into the clouds, like the star-plucking pavilion. At the top of the mountain there was a square platform. It was majestic, like the legendary emperor's coronation platform. Even from afar, this mountain gate gave off an untouchable feeling of grandeur. Even standing at the foot of the mountain, one couldn't help but feel humble. Thunder Saint Palace, the symbol of nobility. The martial arts palace that countless young people yearned to enter. The normally heavily guarded Thunder Saint Palace had actually opened its doors. Hundreds of disciples lined up on both sides of the main peak of the Thunder Saint Palace. The disciples continued to spread out on both sides of the mountain ridge. If one were to look down from the sky, it would look like a huge 8. The center was facing the mountain gate, and it was completely open. There wasn't the slightest bit of precaution. It was as if the door was open and the other party was free to enter. What's going on? What was the meaning of this Thunder Saint Palace? Are you trying to lure me into a trap? A few furtive figures were hiding in the darkness outside the mountain gate in the distance. After the massacre in Wuang Valley, everyone's attention was focused on the Thunder Saint Palace. Although this storm was getting more and more intense, it was still inevitable that some busybodies would suspect and spy on it. It's obvious that they're trying to lure him into a trap. The Thunder Saint Palace is clearly announcing to the world that they don't care about a mere Chu Hen. If he has the ability, he can come. I'll just open the door and wait. This is also in line with the Thunder Saint Palace's high and mighty style of doing things. Some people inwardly nodded. As expected of the Thunder Saint Palace. First, the Heaven Unified Dynasty was destroyed, then the Innocence Valley was destroyed. Chu Hen's imposing manner could be said to be like the sun in the sky. But now the Thunder Saint Palace had put on a "I'm just afraid you won't come" attitude, which could be considered as a blow to Chu Hen's spirit. In the end, the Thunder Saint Palace didn't really care about Chu Hen at all. But will Chu Hen come? The Thunder Saint Palace is not something that Innocence Valley can compare to. Let's not talk about the tens of thousands of elite disciples. Just the number of experts at the Sky Profound Realm alone is more than 30. Just this alone is enough to consign Chu Hen to eternal damnation. That's right. Although Chu Hen has the ability to summon demonic beasts, even if he gathers all the powerful demonic beasts in the entire victorious Dongxing province, he still won't be able to fight against the Thunder Saint Palace. All the demonic beasts? Don't be ridiculous. The revolving beast diagram has a limit. At most, one can only summon 1,000 demonic beasts. Moreover, the spatial distance is also a problem. With just a summoning treasure, he won't be a match for the Thunder Saint Palace. Moreover, even if Chu Hen really has the ability to summon 1,000 powerful demonic beasts, don't forget how terrifying that person is. That person. Hearing these two words, the noisy discussion immediately fell into a deathly silence. After a long time, a voice full of fear and respect was spat out. That person is truly a transcendent existence that has eternal life and is indestructible for 1,000 generations. In reality, not a single person believed that Chu Hen had the ability or capital to fight against the Thunder Saint Palace. The reason why some people gathered here was purely to see if Chu Hen had the guts to openly come to the Thunder Saint Palace. In the blink of an eye, a day passed. The inside and outside of the Thunder Saint Palace was still as calm as before. The sect gate was still wide open, and the nearly 1,000 disciples that were spread out on the east and west side of the mountain were like statues, standing still in their original spots, emitting a cold and sharp aura. Chu Hen still hasn't appeared? Could it be that he doesn't dare to come? There doesn't seem to be any news from the other sects either. The wait was long. Especially with the current situation, the young man called Chu Hen's every move had the magical power to tug at people's heartstrings. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Early in the morning, a thin mist rose from the mountains. When the morning wind blew, it carried a penetrating chill. I must be king crazy to think that Chu Hen would dare to come to the Thunder Saint Palace. I really overestimated him. I reckon that Chu Hen has already escaped the victorious East Province. I think so too. Let's go back. Let's go. I believe that in a few days, we will hear the news of the 100 Kingdoms province and Mount Kunliu being massacred. Just as the busybodies hiding outside the Thunder Saint Palace were preparing to leave, a strange soft sound suddenly rang out from the mountain forest. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. This sound was not loud, and could be said to be extremely soft. However, there was an indescribable sense of steadiness to it. It was long and heavy, like the sound of a sharp metal object being dragged on a rock. "Look over there." "What?" Countless gazes filled with disbelief all looked towards the foot of the main peak of the Thunder Saint Palace. There, a stairway connected to the top of the mountain like a winding dragon lying on the ground. The stairway connected the foot of the mountain directly to the top of the mountain. And on the long stairway, a slightly thin and slender figure was walking up the stone steps step by step. That young and handsome figure was dressed in black, holding a dragon's pine divine spear in his hand. The long spear was held diagonally behind his back, and the tip of the spear touched the ground as it was slowly dragged along the stone steps. As the tip of the spear was dragged along the stone steps, it gave off a sonorous and heavy sound. Faint sparks flew, and a deep mark was continuously being dragged along one step at a time, and with every step he took, it was as if he had walked through an era. That proud and aloof figure brought an indescribable impact and shock to everyone. Chapter 936. What's that? The air between heaven and earth seemed to have fallen into a state of stillness. The people gathered outside the Thunder Saint Palace all widened their eyes, and even the blood in their bodies was slightly restless. Pairs of eyes filled with disbelief were all focused on the peerlessly imposing stairway leading to the Thunder Saint Palace's mountain gate. He actually, really came. Shock and astonishment. Even though it was within reason, the appearance of that figure was like a raging tsunami, causing people's hearts to tremble. Chu Hen was dressed in black. His angular figure looked slightly thin, and the firm lines on his face seemed to have been carved with a knife. His handsomeness carried a cold demonic charm. The draining god's spear was held diagonally behind his back, and the tip of the spear dragged along the steps, leaving a straight and deep mark on the bluestone floor. One step, one spear for each person. Under his calm aura, an unconcealable, unparalleled sharpness, his appearance was like the bright moon in the night sky. This man, who had caused the fall of 2 peak forces in less than 2 months, and slaughtered the lives of millions of people, was now holding a cold spear as he directly stepped onto this giant sect that everyone revered. After the fall of Innocence Valley and the Heaven Dynasty, the Thunder Saint Palace opened its doors and arrogantly challenged Chu Hen. And now, it was Chu Hen's most powerful counterattack. Ta. With every step Chu Hen takes, a dull and powerful sound will be emitted. The draining god's spear's mark extended from the foot of the mountain all the way up. Following Chu Hen's appearance, the many disciples lining the 2 sides of the Thunder Saint Palace couldn't help but reveal some shock and coldness. He really came. Dong. The melodious sound of a bell reverberated inside and outside the Thunder Saint Palace. The sound of the bell was like a warning that a storm was coming, and also like the Thunder Saint Palace's announcement that the turmoil that had lasted for a long time was about to end. Outside the mountain gate, the many busybodies hiding in the dark were all restless and unable to stand steadily. What a nerve-wracking moment! I really wish I could stand on the Thunder Saint Palace's Divine Thunder Arena right now. The Divine Thunder platform is probably full of people now. It's a pity that we can't witness the end of this turmoil with our own eyes. Although they were all outsiders, Chu Hen's influence was enough to shake the entire province. Everyone hoped to see the province's disaster end with their own eyes. In the Eastern Victory Province, the Thunder Saint Palace was a colossus that absolutely could not be shaken by anyone. However, since Chu Hen dared to appear here, perhaps there was an extremely small chance that an unforeseen change would occur. The main peak, Divine Thunder Platform. The majestic main peak was incomparably magnificent, like an ancient heavenly peak of the gods. The vast Divine Thunder Arena took up about 1/3 of the entire peak. It was just like a grand plaza built under the heavens. At this moment, numerous figures with sharp auras had already gathered on the Divine Lightning stage. The crowd was spread out on both sides of the Tao platform square, each of them exuding an aura that was like that of a god or a devil, causing others to feel fear and dread. The atmosphere in the air was almost frozen. Every minute and second seemed to be extraordinarily long. At the center of the Divine Thunder platform square, steps were stacked up, forming a central high platform. There was a stone chair on the high platform. The stone chair was rather tall, and there were all sorts of exquisite and complicated patterns carved on it. However, the stone chair that symbolized supreme power was currently empty. Even so, there seemed to be an invisible majestic aura emanating from it. There were a couple of upper echelon elders standing on both sides of the stone chair. All of their eyes were sharp like eagles waiting for their prey to appear. There were two relatively dim figures in the crowd with a stern aura. Lei Jixin and Lei Xiaolan. They were the only two people from the Thunder Saint Palace who survived the battle in the Xian Chakra Sky region. Compared to their former peerless beauty, aloof and cold arrogance, the two of them now had much weaker temperament. This was especially so for Lei Jixin. She possessed the sacred lightning body, and was once known as the proudest daughter of heaven in the province. Her eyes, which used to look down on everything, now seemed a little slack and dim. Ta, ta, ta. The increasingly clear sound of footsteps came from the mountain gate in front of them. Lei Jixin's heart couldn't help but tremble. She couldn't help but clench her fists tightly. Her gaze was fixed on the stone stairway leading down the mountain in front of the Divine Thunder platform. The heavy footsteps were like a heavy hammer pounding on her heart. The sound of the draining god's spear dragging on the ground was especially unsettling. He's here? He really dares to come to the Thunder Saint Palace? Lei Jixin's fingernails dug deep into the flesh of her palm. Zeng. When the draining god's spear swept across the last step, a layer of sparks appeared in the air. A young figure exuding a frosty aura stepped straight onto the main peak of the Thunder Saint Palace. One person against 10,000. He came to the Thunder Saint Palace alone. Cold, solemn, and deathly silent. Pairs of sword-like eyes were like thousands of heart-piercing arrows as they gathered on Chu Hen. If it was anyone else in this situation, they would tremble from the bottom of their heart. They wouldn't even dare to take another step forward. With so many experts, just their gazes seemed to be able to kill everything. However, Chu Hen's eyes didn't move at all. He walked step by step towards the center of the Divine Thunder platform. He's really here. Lei Jixin's delicate body couldn't help but tremble as she looked at the slender figure in front of her. The moment she saw Chu Hen, the scene that happened in Xian Kshetra region appeared in her mind once again. It was deeply imprinted in her soul. Lei Mingho was chopped into pieces. She, the proud woman who didn't care about any man, was humiliated in front of everyone. Until now, she still couldn't forget the coldness and dryness of Chu Hen's lip. The moment she saw Chu Hen, the humiliation in her heart surged. Hatred, resentment, it made Lei Jixin's eyes redden. However, Chu Hen didn't seem to look at her at all. Under the gaze of the people on both sides, he barged through the plaza and stepped onto the Divine Thunder platform in the center. Then, he raised his gaze, and a low yet powerful voice pierced everyone's eardrums like a sharp sword. I Chu Hen am here. I Chu Hen am here. His cold words couldn't hide the coldness in them. If the Thunder Saint Palace's formation was to announce the end of the turmoil that had lasted for a long time, then the coldness that Chu Hen emitted seemed to be announcing the arrival of a storm. Chi. As soon as he finished speaking, a layer of brilliant lightning suddenly floated on the stone chair in the center of the Divine Thunder platform. The lightning intertwined and formed a figure out of thin air. Then, a middle-aged man with calm eyes sat sideways on the stone chair like a god. The middle-aged man sat sideways with one hand on the armrest of the stone chair. His fingers gently stroked his chin and lower lip. His brows exuded an innate supreme aura, as if he was a monarch who looked down on the ostentatious world, the palace master of the Thunder Saint Palace. Chapter 937. Hua, an invisible wave of air spread out from the divine lightning stage's central platform. Lightning flashed, and light patterns flowed. A figure that seemed to be in control of the world appeared out of thin air on the stone chair at the center of the stage. There seemed to be a faint and low sound of air patterns fluctuating between heaven and earth. In an instant, while everyone looked at Chu Hen with cold and indifferent eyes, they immediately looked at the figure on the stone chair with reverence and respect. The palace master of the Thunder Saint Palace. Leisha. A figure that everyone in the victorious Dongxing Prefecture did not know of. You are the first person in history to have my Thunder Saint Palace welcome you in such a manner. Leisha leaned sideways on the stone chair. His calm eyes revealed neither joy nor anger. Chu Hen stood below the stage, his back as straight as the spear in his hand. Their gazes met, and Chu Hen did not dodge at all. Perhaps I should feel honored? His frivolous tone was tinged with mockery. The surrounding people all frowned, and their faces were cold and gloomy. To be honest, they really couldn't figure out where this extremely arrogant thing in front of them had the confidence to mock their Thunder Saint Palace. Could it be because of those demonic beasts? The corners of Leisha's mouth rose slightly, forming an arc that was not a smile. 7th level of the Sky Profound Realm, to reach this level at such a young age, how rare. Shintu Changkong's death was not undeserved. What? 7th level of the Sky Profound Realm? When they heard Leisha reveal Chu Hen's cultivation in one go, everyone's faces couldn't help but change. How was this possible? How long had it been since the end of the ancient desolate heaven region? In the vast victorious Dongxing Prefecture, not to mention ordinary people, even the number of outstanding geniuses who could reach the Sky Profound Realm before the age of 30 could be counted on one's fingers. When Lei Mingho reached the Sky Profound Realm in his 20s, he was known as the number one in the prefecture. From the looks of it, Chu Hen had left Lei Mingho in the dust. Even if the latter did not die, he would not be able to raise his head in front of Chu Hen. What a terrifying talent! Killing intent surged in the eyes of everyone from the Thunder Saint Palace. Fortunately, Chu Hen came today. Otherwise, if such a disaster was left outside, it would really be a huge threat. Chu Hen's expression remained calm despite the emotional changes of the people around him. Leisha, on the other hand, was somewhat interested. To be honest, it's really a pity to kill you like this. No matter if it's your courage or your talent, I have a whole new level of respect for you. Hearing this, everyone's hearts skipped a beat. Immediately after, Leisha spat out even more startling words. Since you've killed Lei Mingho, why don't you take his place, Hua? Surprise and astonishment. No one would have thought that Leisha would say something like this. Letting Chu Hen replace Lei Mingho, didn't this mean that he wanted to recruit Chu Hen into the Thunder Saint Palace? Not only would their previous grievances be written off, but Chu Hen would also be heavily nurtured by the Thunder Saint Palace in the future. Apart from being shocked, everyone couldn't help but admire Leisha a little more. After all, just one Chu Hen had the ability to destroy a first-rate force. If such a talent could be used by the Thunder Saint Palace, given time, how heaven-defying would it be? Compared to that, obtaining Chu Hen was a lot more than what they had lost before. It had to be said that Leisha's chess move was really exquisite. The two people's eyes met in the air, and Leisha's eyes revealed the majestic confidence of being in control of everything. Oh! Chu Hen's handsome eyebrows raised slightly, and he replied indifferently, and then? But hearing Chu Hen's reply, Leisha couldn't help but reveal a meaningful smile. As long as you agree to join my Thunder Saint Palace, not only will I give you a high position, I will also betroth Jixin to you, and help you achieve great things. What? Hearing this, Lei Jixin, who was standing beside Leisha, suddenly turned pale. She looked at the palace lord in disbelief. He was both shocked and indescribably touched. Marry Chu Hen? How was that possible? That despicable man was a demon who had humiliated her in front of countless people. She couldn't wait to kill him. Lei Jixin couldn't understand Leisha anymore. In fact, there weren't many people in the entire Thunder Saint Palace who could figure out Leisha's intentions. But it was undeniable that the conditions that Leisha gave to Chu Hen were so good that no one was willing to refuse. Thunder Saint Palace was one of the three great forces in the Eastern Victory State. It was a place where everyone fought to get in. As long as Chu Hen nodded, he could enjoy great power and hug beauties. Then Chu Hen smiled, and his smile was especially sarcastic. "Just this, and you want me to be your Thunder Saint Palace's dog?" Leisha's expression was also very calm. He slowly stood up, raised both his arms, and looked like a king who ruled over the world. "Then what do you want?" "Very simple." Chu Hen's eyes narrowed. He raised the Draining God's spear in his hand, pointed it at Leisha, and said word by word, "You come down, I'll sit on it." "Impudent! You dare to be rude to the palace lord. Stupid thing, don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit." As soon as he finished speaking, all the elders and disciples of the Thunder Saint Palace were quite angry. Each of them burst out with an aura like a wild wave, as if they wanted to drown Chu Hen in it. Chu Hen's figure did not move, and the spear did not move. His eyes were still staring coldly at Leisha. "I have always admired ambitious people. If you want to replace me after I abdicate, I can give it to you," Leisha replied calmly. His gaze was full of importance, like a magnanimous king looking at a virtuous minister in the throne room. No one could bear to refuse this wise and virtuous ruler. Even so, the trace of mockery in Chu Hen's eyes did not fade, but became even more intense. "The killing intent under your fake appearance is too obvious." The atmosphere began to tense up, and the smile on Leisha's face gradually faded. Chu Hen's torch-like gaze was like a sharp sword, as if it had the magic to see into the depths of people's hearts. "All you want is the heart of the Black Killer Divine Thunder. You want to dig out all the secrets hidden in my body. You want to capture me without wasting a single soldier, so that the world can praise the wisdom of the Thunder Saint Palace's palace master. Unfortunately, you almost succeeded. The killing intent behind your hypocritical expression made the last bit of mercy I had for you turn into nothingness." Every word was like a pearl, and every single one of them hit the nail on the head. Chu Hen mercilessly tore off the other party's fake mask. In an instant, Leisha's eyes were as cold as the icicles under the eaves on a snowy day. "Isn't it good to be a dog of my Thunder Saint Palace?" Buzz. Along with the sound of his voice, endless killing intent extended like a torrent, and the surrounding people instantly turned into Azuras, bursting out with a fierce and cold aura. Chapter 938. "Wouldn't it be better to be a dog of my Thunder Saint Palace?" There was a mocking sneer and a cold look in his eyes. In an instant, the frozen atmosphere was instantly broken. Along with Leisha's voice, Chu Hen was like a lone boat in the middle of a monstrous wave. The black tide surged in all directions, and it was dark in all directions. One after another, ferocious beast-like figures rushed towards the other party. It was about to start. Leisha turned around and sat quietly on the stone chair, his face indifferent and calm. Figures with rising killing intent launched a fierce attack. Chu Hen's eyes turned cold. He leaned to the side and raised his hand to send out the dripping spirit spear. Hiss! A series of spear shadows flashed, and the sharp spear instantly pierced through the chest of a Thunder Saint Palace disciple. Blood splattered, and the tip of the spear directly rushed out of the disciple's back. Chu Hen's feet moved, and while avoiding attacks from both sides, he immediately flashed behind the disciple and grabbed the tip of the dripping spirit spear, causing the whole spear to pass through the disciple's body. In an instant, one person was killed. Chu Hen waved the spear again, and the momentum was like a dragon coming out of the sea. A thick black light spread out, and the spear swept out, bang, bang, bang. A row of more than 10 people were directly smashed to the ground, vomiting blood. "Bastard, don't be presumptuous!" A thunderous roar shook the earth. An old man with a sharp body suddenly burst out with a majestic aura like that of a mountain. I am the second elder of the Thunder Saint Palace, and today, I will take your life. The second elder of the Thunder Saint Palace had a powerful cultivation of the 7th level of the Sky Profound Realm. However, he had entered this level for many years, and naturally had an advantage over Wu Xiu, who had just reached the 7th level of the Sky Profound Realm. Thunder Rain Needle. The second elder let out a loud shout. Then, he leapt into the air and arrived above Chu Hen in a flash. He stretched out both of his palms, and a ball of lightning flashed in his palms. Countless silver lightning needles fell down at an extremely fast speed, explosively attacking. Countless thunder and lightning needles were like a torrential rain of pear blossoms. His speed was extremely fast, and his attacks were extremely strong. The corners of Chu Hen's eyes narrowed. A wave of air surged from his feet, and he immediately flashed away. Chi chi chi, the bricks were pierced through, and numerous tiny holes appeared on the ground. Each of these seemingly tiny lightning needles actually possessed terrifying penetrative and lethal power. Once hit, it would definitely not feel good. You want to hide? I'll make sure you have nowhere to run. Then, another middle-aged man with an equally strong aura flashed over. Although the middle-aged man's aura wasn't as dense as the second elder's, it had reached the same level as the second elder, the 7th level of the Sky Profound Realm. Duh! The middle-aged man put his palms together and stared at Chu Hen with a flash of electricity in his eyes. An astonishing aura burst out from his body. Profound Thunder Pillar! Boom! In the next moment, the tiles on the ground around Chu Hen burst open. Dazzling and strong thunder pillars, such as the brilliant god tree that broke through the soil, appeared one after another. The thunder and lightning pillars formed a circle, like a trapped beast's cage, and instantly sealed all of Chu Hen's escape routes. Well done, the second elder sneered, and an even stronger aura than before shrouded Chu Hen. Thunder Rain Needle. Swish, 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 thousands of thunder and lightning needles covered the sky and the earth, carrying a thick thread of death as they attacked Chu Hen, who was trapped in a narrow area with such a dense attack and the restriction of moving space. No matter how fast he was, it was impossible for him to escape. However, there was not the slightest hint of panic on Chu Hen's face. He suddenly raised the draining god's spear in his hand, pointed it down, and stabbed the ground. Bang! Rubble flew everywhere, and the ground cracked. Roar! Accompanied by a vigorous and ferocious beast's roar, a monstrous black light burst out in all directions with Chu Hen as the center. It was as if a huge lotus had bloomed on the ground. At the same time that the lightning pillar that had sealed Chu Hen's path of retreat was broken apart, a sinister and frightening ancient lizard dragon's shadow, which was covered in black scales, instantly appeared in everyone's eyes. The lizard dragon's wings folded, and like a protective divine beast, it protected Chu Hen under its body. The dense thunder rain needles were like a deep quagmire. Although they could penetrate the ancient lizard dragon's body, they were not enough to penetrate the front and back, and touch Chu Hen. I didn't expect the power of the draining god's spear to become so strong. Then I will accept it on behalf of the Heaven Unified Dynasty. As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged man who cooperated with the second elder to use the profound thunder pillar suddenly flashed down, and at the same time, his arms were covered with layers of manic electric arcs, flash-cut blade. His hand turned into an incomparably sharp lightning blade, and like a divine blade that could cut through iron like mud, it split open a layer of black waves, and directly tore apart the body of the ancient lizard dragon that was protecting Chu Hen. The experts of the Thunder Saint Palace were as numerous as the clouds. Powerful cultivators could be found everywhere, and the attacks they launched also came one after another. The moment they made their move, they had the imposing manner of wanting to push Chu Hen into the abyss. The ancient lizard dragon that was formed from power was like a broken wall. The middle-aged man revealed a disdainful sneer, and then his other hand burst out with thousands of dazzling spirit patterns. Dragon capturing Thunder Hand. The powerful Thunder Saint Palace's secret technique was displayed. The middle-aged man's entire arm rapidly expanded, and his veins and muscles bulged, flickering with dazzling silver arcs. It was like a grafted hand of thunder and lightning. Rumble. Wind and thunder moved together, and the opponent's hand of thunder and lightning directly pulled the draining god's spear from Chu Hen's hand into his palm. In the blink of an eye, the Thunder Saint Palace's members all revealed looks of disdain. The middle-aged man also sneered proudly, "This spear is mine. Out of gratitude to you, I will leave your corpse intact." Chu Hen's eyelids twitched slightly, and a trace of mockery appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Not a bad idea, but do you really have the ability to move it?" As soon as these words came out, the hearts of Lei Jixin and Lei Xiaolan, who were on the high platform in the center of the divine lightning arena, suddenly shrank. "Not good. Let go!" Before the words of warning could come out of their mouths, the draining god's spear suddenly flickered with a silver-white light, the long spear rapidly shortened, and the heavy and ferocious spear body immediately became sharp and light. "This is—" The middle-aged man was startled, and the weapon in his hand suddenly transformed into a light saber that was as straight as a sword. In the next second, a slender and powerful hand instantly grasped the other end of the saber hilt. Hiss! A series of blood spurted out, and the middle-aged man's eyes immediately widened. His expression changed drastically, and the sharp pain caused all the nerves in his body to tense up. Half of his palm was cut off. Fourth Elder. The expressions of the Thunder Saint Palace's members all changed, and they were horrified. Zing! Then, a slight tremor stacked up, and the light of death flashed in front of the middle-aged man's eyes. Afterimages appeared in the air, and Chu Hen's figure directly flashed behind the middle-aged man. At the same time, the Tianai saber mercilessly slashed across the middle-aged man's neck. Chapter 939. Fourth Elder. Amidst the panicked cries of the crowd, Chu Hen pushed his saber forward. The cold saber light instantly chopped off half of the middle-aged man's palm, and even his neck. Warm blood gushed out like a fountain. A round head flew out along with the severed palm. Xing! The Tianai saber let out a resonant cry of death. Chu Hen turned into a flickering shadow, his cold aura intimidating everyone present. The kill was completed in an instant. Different realms of the same level. Even though the opponent's cultivation was also at the 7th level of the Sky Profound Realm, to Chu Hen, it was just a matter of being killed in an instant. "Bastard, you dare to kill him. I'll skin you, bastard." The second elder was furious, his eyes red with anger. The surrounding people were also shocked and furious. They all burst out with powerful auras, like ferocious beasts pouncing on their prey, attacking Chu Hen from all sides. Facing this menacing attack from all sides, Chu Hen raised his head slightly, his eyes flashing with a deep cold light. Dragging the Tianai saber, he directly charged into the crowd and started a massacre. Crackle! Streaks of narrow, sharp black lightning covered the Tianai saber. Chu Hen's aura was like a fierce tiger descending the mountain, a flood dragon entering the sea, every slash drawing blood, every move taking a life. The lightning-fast saber light was like a fleeting shadow, quickly harvesting the lives of the Thunder Saint Palace experts. Lowly bastard, die! A disciple of the Thunder Saint Palace attacked with a spear in his hand. The sharp spear was like a bolt of lightning flashing through the air. It suddenly pierced forward, straight towards Chu Hen's heart. Chu Hen narrowed his eyes, a cold smile appearing on his face. He flipped his wrist upwards, and the gorgeous blade slashed out vertically. The two collided, and the opponent's spear was like a bamboo pole meeting a divine blade. It was actually split from the tip of the spear. It truly cut through iron like mud. The Thunder Saint Palace disciple was horrified. Compared to the Tianai saber in Chu Hen's hand, the weapon in his hand was like mud, without any chance to dodge. The holy sword flashing with black electric arcs slashed down. Shrill screams rang out one after another. First, an arm was cut in half. Then, his entire body was cut in half by the merciless blade light. Blood splattered on the divine thunder platform. Alone, stained with the blood of 10,000 people, Chu Hen wandered freely in this dense mass of enemies. Wherever he went, a rain of blood splattered and limbs flew. Endless murderous aura filled the sky and the earth, becoming more and more intense. On the high platform in the center of the divine thunder platform, Lei Jixin's emotions had never relaxed. The scene in front of her seemed familiar. The situation in the Xian Kshetra region 2 months ago was very similar to the current situation. 1 against 100. 1 against 1,000. Challenging 10,000 people alone. At this very moment, Lei Jixin's mind couldn't help but recall the scene she saw when Chu Hen used an illusion technique to attack her mind in the illusion. The entire Thunder Saint Palace was covered in blood and razed to the ground. The overshadowed Qiankuan land was dyed in blood, and bones were piled up like mountains. Miss Lei, as you wish, the Thunder Saint Palace that you're so proud of will be exactly the same as what you see now. At that time, Chu Hen's words directly caused Lei Jixin's psychological defense to completely collapse. Today, the man who was like a nightmare had really come. An inexplicable sense of unease made Lei Jixin's expression exceptionally ugly. Impossible. With his ability, it's impossible for him to leave alive. Lei Jixin thought to herself. Lei Jixin secretly said. She was very clear about how strong the Thunder Saint Palace was. Not to mention a 7th-level sky profound realm Chu Hen, even if there were 10 of him, it would still be difficult for them to escape death today. Thinking of this, Lei Jixin felt slightly relieved. Then, she subconsciously looked at Palace Master Lei Jixin. She saw that the latter was still sitting on the stone throne with a calm expression. He didn't even frown, which once again soothed the unease in her heart. There was no doubt that the Thunder Saint Palace was powerful, but Chu Hen's unruliness was equally unbridled. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 people died in the hands of Chu Hen. Bang! Bang! Blade light and sword shadows, true essence surged. Waves after waves of biting cold energy attacked from all directions. Chu Hen soared into the sky. Both of his hands held onto the blade, and a raging wave of power swept out. Slash! Buzz! With a shout, a blade light that was more than 100 meters long descended with the power to split the sky and split the earth. Boom! The blade shocked the heavens, shaking the mountains and rivers. The space trembled, and wherever the blade light went, figures were chopped into pieces. The surging blade waves surged out from the left and right sides, and a wide ravine suddenly appeared in the square below. Evil creature, don't be presumptuous. The second elder, who was waiting for an opportunity, had a cold glint in his eyes, and an incomparably violent and restless aura pressed down from the sky. Clang! 3,000 lightning strikes, the wind and clouds roared. Rolling dark clouds covered the sky, and then more than a dozen strong lightning bolts descended from the sky, like a startling rainbow piercing through the sky. More than a dozen lightning bolts rapidly converged together, and the burst of light lit up the heaven and earth. In a split second, an incomparably huge bolt of lightning appeared above Chu Hen's head, as if it was a heavenly punishment from the heavens. The second elder of the Thunder Saint Palace actually turned into a beam of light and charged into the majestic bolt of lightning, fusing with it as one. Thunder and lightning rise. The intimidating sound made everyone's eardrums ache. Immediately afterward, the earth-shattering huge lightning bolt set off a dense destructive aura and fiercely blasted down on Chu Hen. The terrifying pressure made everyone's blood boil and their minds tremble. The second elder's attack was enough to kill an expert of the same level as him. Annihilate! The second elder, who had merged with the lightning bolt, sneered with a sinister look in his eyes. Looking at the sky that was comparable to the descending heavenly pillar lightning punishment, Chu Hen's heart moved. A purple light flickered in his deep eyes. Hua! Air waves stacked up, and a layer of dense purple demonic flames immediately spilled out and climbed onto the blade's body. In an instant, the Tianai blade released a purple shadow, and a solid phantom of the blade extended and expanded, turning into a dozen meters long. It was as if Chu Hen was holding a giant blade in his hand. Roar! There seemed to be a ferocious tiger roaring between heaven and earth. Chu Hen dragged the giant purple shadow blade with both hands, and from bottom to top, he slashed horizontally, facing the huge lightning bolt head-on. A series of afterimages swept through the air. A silver and a purple light flashed in the void, like two divine rainbows that had unexpectedly met. Clang! A deafening explosion resounded through the sky, and thousands of sparks and fiery rain bloomed between the two of them. Circles of vigorous light waves swept out, causing the mountains and rivers to tremble, and many luxurious and imposing buildings began to crack, boom. What followed was the sound of thunder and lightning energy being cut off. Everyone's faces changed because of this. The Tianai blade in Chu Hen's hand, which had transformed into a huge purple shadow blade, had actually embedded itself into the shocking lightning pillar. Crack, sparks flew, and electric arcs flew everywhere. This powerful lightning bolt that contained terrifying destructive power was cut apart layer by layer, and was cut off inch by inch. What? The second elder of the Thunder Saint Palace, who had merged with the lightning bolt, turned pale. He never thought that Chu Hen's strength would be so strong. The Tianai blade's edge could even cut through lightning in a hurry. The second elder hurriedly retreated. However, Chu Hen's speed was clearly even faster. Both of his hands dragged the Tianai blade, breaking through layer after layer of obstructions, and instantly arrived in front of his opponent. The second elder, who turned pale with fright, extended both of his palms, struck out a palm energy, and retreated backwards. Bang! The palm force landed, but it only shattered the layer of purple shadow that covered the blade. Along with the rapid whirlwind, Chu Hen held the blade in a reverse grip, and with a sudden thrust, he stabbed the cold and sharp Tianai blade into his opponent's chest. A series of blood splattered, and the second elder's body bowed down. Chapter 940. Chi, the sound of a sharp weapon piercing through flesh filled the air. The body of the Thunder Saint Palace's second elder bent down, making him look like a lobster. Chu Hen held his blade in a reverse grip, and with a sudden thrust, he pierced the sharp blade in his hand into his opponent's chest. In an instant, the entire Divine Thunder Arena was once again filled with astonishment. First, the fierce fourth elder was killed in a second, and now it was the powerful second elder. Chu Hen's sharpness had already pierced through everyone's pupils. Lei Jixin, who was in the center of the Divine Thunder Arena, couldn't help but clench her fists so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The scene in front of her was definitely not what she wanted to see. Two 7th-level Sky Profound Realm experts were defeated by Chu Hen one after another. Moreover, he was able to turn the tables while being surrounded by tens of thousands of people. This man was much more terrifying than when he was in the Xiankshetra sky region. Hiss! The Tianai blade pierced through the back of the Thunder Saint Palace's second elder like a hot knife through butter. Blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth, and he stared at the young face that was inches away from him in terror. His eyes, which shone with a purple light, were bewitching, and they shone with the cold glare of the god of death. Chu Hen held the hilt of his blade and pushed it forward. The powerful hidden force impacted his opponent's internal organs. The second elder let out a painful roar as the veins on his forehead bulged. However, Chu Hen was still indifferent. He didn't even blink as a hint of disdain appeared at the corner of his mouth. It was as sharp as a machete. "Stop, you evil creature!" At this time, another powerful and vigorous aura followed and attacked. Heavenly Thunder Hand. Rumble, wind and thunder overlapped as the sky trembled. Tens of thousands of lightning patterns fell down and converged to form a giant hand covered in arcs of lightning, sparks, and fire rained down, as if the god of thunder's giant hand was directly smashing toward Chu Hen. The power was shocking, and the powerful pressure made one's blood boil. Chu Hen's eyes turned cold. He had to admit that the Thunder Saint Palace experts were far more capable than the motley crew from the Xiankshetra sky region. The attacks came one after another. one killing move after another. His reaction speed was also quite fast. Immediately, Chu Hen pulled out his blade and kicked the second elder's abdomen. With the help of the recoil, he quickly retreated. The second elder, who was already injured, was hit a second time. He was in so much pain that his eyes were about to pop out of their socket. He was like a sandbag that was sent flying. However, the original intention of this lightning hand was to save the second elder, and not to attack Chu Hen. In the next instant, the 5 fingers of the lightning hand closed, holding the second elder in its palm with a protective stance. Humph! With a cold snort, the heavenly thunder hand returned to where it came from. There, an old man with sharp eyes stood in the air. Although this old man had a white beard and eyebrows, he didn't look old at all. The aura he emitted was like that of a white tiger, inspiring awe. Grand Elder! The second elder called out weakly as if he had seen his savior. This overbearing elder was none other than the person who held great power in the Thunder Saint Palace. He was the leader of all the elders, and he was also in existence at the 8th level of the Sky Profound Realm. Third elder, heal him. The Grand Elder waved his sleeve, and the heavenly thunder hand pushed the weak second elder toward a figure in the back. That person pushed out a palm energy and caught the second elder. He then retreated to a spacious rooftop and began to treat him. On the Divine Thunder platform, the people of the Thunder Saint Palace were shocked, but they didn't panic. Although Chu Hen defeated 2 powerful elders in a row and killed hundreds of people, it was nothing for the Thunder Saint Palace, which had a strong foundation. Humph! What a surprising fellow! Jiang Chen sneered. The great elder's tiger-like eyes firmly stared at Chu Hen, who was in the air in front of him. Then, a sinister sneer quietly emerged. Since you're here, why don't you take a look at our Thunder Saint Palace's Supreme Celestial Slaughter Formation, Supreme Celestial Slaughter Formation. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, an earth-shattering wave of air swept across the sky. The sky lost its color, and dark clouds surged like a tide. The Thunder Saint Palace experts surrounding Chu Hen all retreated a kilometer away. Then, in the air all around them, a long line of people began to form. More than 10,000 Thunder Saint Palace disciples were scattered around Chu Hen in an orderly manner. They were orderly, and with a special pattern, they formed 4 vortexes. From afar, they looked like 4 huge coiling dragons that were distributed around Chu Hen. They were like a herd of beasts. The air flow between heaven and earth became extremely restless. It was as if Chu Hen was in the middle of a storm. He had nowhere to hide as he faced the incoming pressure. The wind that was whipped up was as sharp as a knife. A chaotic aura enveloped the sky above the Thunder Saint Palace and extended outside the sect. Heavens, heavens! That's the Supreme Celestial Slaughter Formation? Outside the sect, the people who were hiding in the dark to watch the show were shocked by the spectacular scene in the sky. The people who arranged the formation surrounded each other and formed 4 huge coiling dragons that emitted a heaven-piercing aura. Meanwhile, Chu Hen, who was in the center, seemed extremely small. He was like a small boat in the middle of a storm. Hiss! Everyone secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. This aura was really terrifying. After so many years, the Supreme Celestial Slaughter Formation has appeared once again. Another person sighed. The last time was more than 100 years ago, right? At that time, the Thunder Saint Palace used this Supreme Celestial Slaughter Formation to destroy the Blue Sea sect, which was ranked among the top 10 forces at that time. This is a formation that can easily destroy a first-rate sect. I didn't wait here for 3 days and 3 nights in vain. Feeling the aura and rhythm of the Supreme Celestial Slaughter Formation, the people who were watching the show were all shocked and amazed. While they were in awe of the Thunder Saint Palace's strength, they also secretly felt sorry for Chu Hen. It was definitely unprecedented for the Thunder Saint Palace to use the Supreme Celestial Slaughter Formation to deal with a single person. Even if Chu Hen was about to die, His name was enough to be remembered by the world. Similarly, in everyone's opinion, the moment the formation appeared, the battle was about to come to an end. Chu Hen's fate was also decided. You should be proud to die under this formation. The Grand Elder looked at Chu Hen as if he was looking at a dead man. Trial of 10,000 swords. The furious aura was like a command from the god of death. Along with the Grand Elder's words, the disciples of the Thunder Saint Palace who were surrounding the void all had sharp swords flashing with lightning in their hands in the midst of the chase. The people who were at the front all threw the lightning swords in their hands. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In an instant, 10,000 swords shot out at the same time, and the swords rained down. Spiraling sword shadows tore through the air and attacked Chu Hen, who was in the center from all four directions. Countless sword rays dragged out majestic waves of air in the air. The body of the sword was also surrounded by lightning. It was dazzling and released the radiance of the aura of death. Faced with such concentrated and piercingly cold attacks, Chu Hen responded to the myriad of changes by remaining unchanged. Dragging the Karma blade, he swung it in a circle, slashing out layer after layer of surging blade waves to meet the incoming sword images. Bang! Boom! The sword light and the saber light clashed, setting off waves of heavy air and lightning. Around Chu Hen, a rain of light splattered in all directions, and the sword shadows flew together. Although the speed was extremely fast and the saber aura was unusually sharp, the sword shadows were too numerous. Wounds of varying depths appeared on Chu Hen's shoulders, arms, calves, and cheeks one after another. Even so, Chu Hen's eyes were still calm, without the slightest ripple. Outside of the killing formation, the Great Elder's cold gaze was suffused with chilliness. It seemed that Chu Hen had suffered quite a few injuries, but without exception, they were all superficial wounds. Those attacks aimed at vital points were all blocked by the opponent, second level. The Grand Elder shouted. Buzz. Immediately after, the disciples of the Thunder Saint Palace erupted with a powerful aura. Moreover, everyone's aura was uniform, and they had all reached the same level. The space around Chu Hen trembled in a strange manner. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The wantonly flying sword shadows actually gathered together in an orderly manner. They were arranged in an orderly manner, like a rising dragon soaring into the sky. Then, they formed a dense and huge sword pillar. Tens of thousands of lightning swords were closely arranged, and there were almost no gaps between them. This was not an illusory sword aura, but a real sword. The aura it exuded was enormous and terrifying. It was comparable to the sword of a god, capable of destroying heaven and earth and tearing through the sky. It's over. Regardless of whether it was the people of the Thunder Saint Palace on the Divine Thunder platform or the spectators outside, they were all shocked by the shocking aura in front of them. The huge sword pillar flickered with dazzling lightning, and with the power to kill the heavens, it crashed down towards Chu Hen below. Ever since the supreme celestial slaying formation was created, no one had been able to survive it. Buzz, buzz. The sword pillar descended, and the divine light shone brightly in the sky, piercing everyone's eyes. Chu Hen's figure was quickly engulfed by the dazzling light. At this moment, a mysterious black shadow actually rushed out from behind Chu Hen. The black shadow raised its hands to the sky, and directly supported the descending sword pillar with its palms. Bang! The deafening explosion instantly swept across the sky above the Divine Thunder platform. The impact this time caused the entire Thunder Saint Palace to tremble and sway. A strong wind blew, and the air was like a knife. The earth, mountains, and rivers were all illuminated, and the sky was filled with lightning. For example, a star exploded, a monstrous lightning soared into the sky, and a layer of violent shock wave crushed in all directions. Everyone was shaken to the point that their blood and chi churned, and disorderly sword shadows danced wantonly, covering the sky and covering the earth. Chapter 941. Bang! The sound was earth-shattering, and the wind was like a knife. The terrifying power of the second stage of the supreme celestial slaying formation surged between heaven and earth, and the shock wave that erupted instantly wreaked havoc on the entire area. Many high-rise buildings on the main peak of the Thunder Saint Palace collapsed one after another. He's still not dead. The great elder of the Thunder Saint Palace stared coldly at the sky. However, the scene that appeared next caused everyone inside and outside the Thunder Saint Palace to raise their eyebrows and widen their eyes once again. Amidst the dancing sword shadows, the cold young figure still stood in the sky with a calm aura. Whoosh! Everyone was astonished and shocked. How is this possible? He's actually completely fine. What kind of monster is this guy? Not only the great elder of the Thunder Saint Palace and the others, but even the spectators hiding outside the sect were astonished. The power of the sword just now, not to mention Chu-Hen, who was in the 7th stage of the profound sky realm, even an 8th stage expert would not be able to withstand it. The supreme celestial slaying formation was a terrifying formation that could destroy a first-rate force in an instant. However, the truth was right in front of them, and they had no choice but to believe it. Dust filled the sky, and the wind and clouds swayed. There were only some slight scratches on Chu-Hen's body from the dense rain of swords just now, and other than that, there were no other injuries. Everyone was shocked and bewildered. What exactly happened just now? On the stone throne in the center of the divine thunder platform, Palace Master Leja narrowed his eyes slightly, and a lot of interest surged between his brows. Just now, he had clearly seen that in the moment of imminent peril, a mysterious black figure had blocked in front of Chu-Hen, and blocked that life-threatening strike for him. With Leja's eyesight, it was not difficult to see that the black shadow was not a martial arts secret skill or a protective treasure, but more like a kind of bloodline power. A bloodline power that could block the power of the supreme celestial slaying formation? Leja's interest in Chu-Hen grew stronger. There were simply too many secrets on this kid. It was impossible for an ordinary person to have so many trump cards and secrets. This is really getting more and more interesting. Leja nodded slightly, and his voice revealed a bit of soul-piercing coldness. The so-called Thunder Saint Palace only has this much ability? Chu-Hen stood in the void, and there was a hint of sarcasm in his eyes. The first elder's face darkened. He had to admit that this was an unexpected setback for him and the Thunder Saint Palace. It's not good to be happy too early. Immortal Slaying Formation, Level 3. Rumble, a heavy voice spread out. Wind and thunder moved at the same time. The people arranging the array immediately changed the form of the array. One by one, the swift and fierce figures lined up from the bottom to the top, instantly transforming from the coiling dragon shape into a pyramid. 4 pyramids, formed by the crowd, stood in the 4 directions of Chu-Hen. They were like 4 fortresses that reached the heavens. Thunder clouds rolled in the 9 heavens, and one after another, majestic lightning pillars flickered in the layers of clouds. Buzz, everyone was facing Chu-Hen, who was in the center. Every single one of them exuded a thick and violent aura. This aura seemed to come from thousands of ferocious beasts. The 4 pyramids formed by the experts of the Thunder Saint Palace were very oppressive. No matter which level they were at, there were people facing Chu-Hen, and there were no blind spots at all. Thunder Beast Assault, the first elder shouted, and a fierce aura surged out like a tiger, like a king of beasts commanding. In an instant, the giant pyramids around Chu-Hen began to separate from the center. The experts of the Thunder Saint Palace were like a swarm of bees leaving their nest, and layer by layer, they aggressively charged toward Chu-Hen. Zap, zap. As they moved, all the disciples of the Thunder Saint Palace released bolts of violent lightning energy. The lightning energy quickly revolved around their bodies, intertwined, and instantly transformed into the image of a ferocious bull. Rumble. A momentum that could topple mountains and overturn the seas rose into the sky. It was as if thousands of soldiers and horses were galloping at the same time. The mighty sound was like 10,000 cowhide drums being beaten at the same time. All the disciples of the Thunder Saint Palace who were attacking Chu Hen had transformed into raging lightning bulls, covering the sky and shaking the earth. At this moment, even the sky was trembling. The airflow between heaven and earth became extremely chaotic. Each of the raging lightning bulls exuded the power to break through thousands of kilograms, leaving behind dazzling arcs of lightning in the sky. Wherever they went, the space would tremble from all directions. The densely packed lightning shadows all surged toward Chu Hen. Chu Hen, who was in the center, was about to face the unprecedented impact of the raging tide. There was also nowhere to hide. It's so King spectacular. With this kind of impact, any sect would be instantly flattened. Chu Hen should be done for this time. The raging lightning bull tide, above the Thunder Saint Palace, caused the spectators outside the sect to tremble in fear. At this moment, they no longer doubted the rumor that the Supreme Celestial Murdering Formation could easily flatten a first-rate sect. At this moment, a ball of dazzling starlight appeared in the palm of Chu Hen's left hand. Chu Hen raised one hand to the sky, and a spiral of silver light spun rapidly. Vigorous star energy surged out and gathered in the palm of his hand to compress, in the blink of an eye. An extremely dense ball of energy appeared above Chu Hen's head. As the ball of energy continued to expand, the airflow between heaven and earth was also stirred. In the blink of an eye, with Chu Hen as the center, a powerful whirlwind that spun rapidly was quietly formed. However, at the same time, the raging lightning bulls formed by the disciples of the Thunder Saint Palace from all directions also charged forward. A terrifying aura surged forth like a tidal wave. Just as Chu Hen was about to be engulfed by this ferocious energy, his eyes suddenly shone with a purple light, 5-star demon eyes, silent burial, storm. An invisible rhythm swept out from the demon eyes. Buzz, the space violently trembled. With Chu Hen as the center, a demonic flame storm suddenly rose between the heavens and the earth. The spectacular purple flame tornado stirred the heavens and the earth, just like a sandstorm rising in a desert. What's that? Everyone inside and outside the Thunder Saint Palace was shocked. This was especially so for Lei Jixin and Lei Xiaolan. When they were in the Xian Kshetra sky region, they had personally witnessed this terrifying flame tornado instantly burning hundreds of people into ashes. Before everyone could figure out Chu Hen's intentions, the area covered by the demonic flame storm suddenly increased by several times. The expression of the Thunder Saint Palace's Grand Elder changed abruptly as if he suddenly understood something. He hurriedly shouted, "Retreat, retreat!" Along with his hurried voice, the huge vortex formed by the demonic flame storm and the Merak annihilation overlapped and reached an extremely shocking value. Bang! A loud explosion resounded. It was as if a star had exploded, and an earth-shattering storm swept across the sky above the Thunder Saint Palace. The purple flame and the silver starlight merged. The power of the 7 stars and the evil flame's double cyclone was like a blooming nebula whirlpool. Wherever it went, it shattered everything. Bang, bang, bang! The energy storm that swept across heaven and earth crushed the dense crowd that was charging over. The disciples of the Thunder Saint Palace were directly crushed along with the bull silhouettes around them. The demonic flame storm was already domineering, and with the help of the vortex and the impact of the 7-star energy, it was like a life-reaping hellfire. This was a sublimation of wind and fire. The rapidly rotating airflow could increase the power of the demonic flame by several times. To the disciples of the Thunder Saint Palace, this was like a feast of destruction. For a time, miserable screams rang out, and the sea of flames dyed the sky purple. The disciples of the Thunder Saint Palace could not dodge in time, and they were swallowed by the purple storm one after another. Layer after layer of shock waves swept out, and everyone was turned into ashes one after another. The densely packed crowd caused the disciples of the Thunder Saint Palace to suffer heavy casualties in a short period of time. The Supreme Celestial Murdering Formation was defeated. Chapter 942. Boom! Bang! The combination of wind and fire brought about a massacre that swept across the sky above the Thunder Saint Palace. The terrifying purple tornado was like a nebula vortex that could destroy everything. The demonic flames were mixed with the power of the 7 stars. Wherever it passed, the disciples of the Thunder Saint Palace were directly crushed into ashes and dust. Chaotic screams filled the air, and the barbaric lightning bolts that surged like a tide were smashed into pieces one after another. The concentration of the crowd and the sheer number of them left them with no time to escape or retreat. From afar, the tens of thousands of Thunder Saint Palace's disciples were like moths flying into a flame. They did not even have time to react before they were swept into the whirlpool. The purple demonic flame covered the sky and covered the earth as it burned the supreme celestial slaughtering formation. In just a blink of an eye, more than 2,000 people had died on the spot, and there were countless injured. Oh my God! Am I under an illusion? Outside the Thunder Saint Palace, the spectators who were hiding in the dark watched the spectacular scene in the sky above the divine thunder platform from afar. The purple light that dyed the sky was like a majestic cloud of fire. Although they were far away, everyone could still feel the piercingly cold and powerful waves of air. This was the Thunder Saint Palace, a powerful formation that could destroy a sect. At that moment, it was forcefully destroyed by Chu Hen's hands. Everyone's eyes were trembling with unease. Only when they saw it with their own eyes did they truly understand how terrifying Chu Hen was. The sky above the divine thunder platform was in chaos. The flaming storm spread wantonly, causing everyone to flee in all directions. The Grand Elder was enraged. His eyes were dark, and the veins on his forehead were bulging. "Bastard, you really deserve to die." The Grand Elder was furious. His anger soared to the sky, and his killing intent was awe-inspiring. A mountainous aura surged out of him. Without saying a word, he charged toward Chu Hen, leaving a trail of dazzling lightning in the air. He had never been so furious before. If it was said that he wanted to use the supreme celestial murdering formation to prove the power of the Thunder Saint Palace and make Chu Hen fall into despair. Therefore, Chu Hen's counterattack this time was like a slap to his opponent's face with the sole of a muddy shoe. Even for the powerful Thunder Saint Palace, having thousands of elite disciples killed in one go was a loss that could not be ignored. At that moment, the Great Elder only had one thought in his mind, and that was to kill this abominable bastard as soon as possible to vent the hatred in his heart. Roar! At this moment, a deafening tiger roar reverberated in the sky. The invisible sound wave penetrated into the depths of one's soul, causing one's internal organs to tremble. A dense pressure rushed towards the Great Elder, only to see a white saber-toothed giant tiger rushing out from the chaotic dancing flames. The gigantic beast was ferocious and powerful. The Great Elder's eyes were scarlet red, his gaze ruthless. Scram! Heavenly Thunder Bringer! With that, he stretched out his palm towards the sky and spread open his fingers. Clang! The lightning in the sky surged, followed by a terrifying bolt of lightning that was hundreds of meters long descending from the sky, bringing with it a dense destructive aura as it struck towards the white saber-toothed giant tiger. The lightning illuminated the sky like a divine sword. Boom! The heavenly thunder that had the power to destroy everything struck the middle of the saber-toothed giant tiger's body, directly splitting it in two, but at the same time that the saber-toothed tiger was split into two, it suddenly opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the heavens and the earth, whistling through the mountains and rivers. A holy blade that flickered with a white flowing shadow actually flew out explosively from its mouth. Whoosh! The heavenly karma saber was surrounded by holy light, tearing through the air as fast as an aurora. In the process of moving, the saber rapidly elongated, the blade turning into a sharp spear tip, and the thin blade immediately became the body of the spear connected by the dragon's spine. Buzz, buzz, spirals of air gathered at the tip of the spear tip, spinning rapidly, and a ferocious phantom of an ancient lizard dragon with a pair of wings suddenly appeared in front of the Great Elder. Damn it! The great elder of Thunder Saint Palace's expression changed dramatically, and his heart was filled with horror. The white saber-toothed tiger just now was just a feint. This was the real attack that would take his life. Careless. Really careless. But this carelessness was enough to take his life. Hiss. Bright red blood splattered, as if from hell. The dripping god's spear turned into a beam of light and pierced through the great elder's throat. His eyes were wide open, and fear filled his entire twisted old face. The anger just now had made him lose his mind. A moment of impulsiveness in exchange for death. A dazzling bloody hole slowly opened up in his neck, like a blooming flower. In an instant, the entire Thunder Saint Palace trembled in shock and anger. The second elder on the high sky platform, the third elder who was healing the former, Lei Jixin, Lei Xiaolan, and everyone else inside and outside the sect were terrified out of their wits. Unbelievable! A series of blood splattered from the sky, and the great elder of Thunder Saint Palace fell powerlessly from the void with his eyes wide open, full of resentment and unwillingness. His death finally directly angered Palace Master Lei Jia. What a pity! Lei Jia fiercely stood up from his stone chair, and his surging true essence pierced through the vault of heaven and went straight up to the Milky Way. The purple flames and turbulent cyclones that shrouded the divine thunder platform seemed to be split apart by an invisible giant blade. The mighty waves of light were all split apart to both sides. In the void, the young figure shrouded in purple light stood in the air, looking down at Lei Jia. Buzz, a heavy invisible pressure spread in the air. Lei Jia clenched his fists, his clothes fluttering in the wind, and the light in his eyes was like the sharp sword of death. You have already lost the right to die. From now on, you will forever be accompanied by pain in my Thunder Saint Palace's prison. Your life will be like hell, a life worse than death. This was the anger of a king. From beginning to end, no one dared to kill wantonly in the Thunder Saint Palace. Especially in front of him, Lei Jia. 2 elders and thousands of disciples died in a row, and Lei Jia could no longer let Chu Hen continue. Even though he was the high and mighty master of the Thunder Saint Palace, he had to personally end everything. Die. Rumble. An aura that could shake mountains and rivers surged into the sky, and Lei Jia's body was immediately covered with interweaving lightning nets. In the next moment, a huge lightning net appeared in the space below Chu Hen. Light and shadow interweaved, lightning flashed, and the gorgeous lightning net was like a talisman array. Then, the space twisted uneasily, and the wind blew violently. A huge hand suddenly stretched out from the lightning net. The hand, condensed from the power of lightning, was far from what the great elder had displayed before. Chapter 943. You've already lost the right to die. From now on, you'll spend the rest of your life crying in the prison of my Thunder Saint Palace. Your life will be like an endless purgatory, a life worse than death. The heavens and earth shook and a gust of wind blew. Just as Lei Jia's voice faded, lightning flashed between the heaven and earth. Holy splendor soared into the sky, and along with an extremely chaotic aura, a huge hand made of lightning rose from the sky. Like a demon god, it smashed towards Chu Hen in the sky above. The Thunder Saint Palace master was finally angry. Even though Lei Jia had not planned to make a move from the beginning, he only needed to watch from the sidelines with a supreme status. But what was unexpected was that this young man, who was only in his 20s, had killed 2 in a row, severely injured a high-level elder, and killed thousands of disciples in front of Lei Jia. Unforgivable, killing intent filled the sky, and the majestic giant hand of lightning whistled through the air, smashing into Chu Hen's body with the power to destroy mountains. Boom! The sky trembled incessantly, and the dazzling lightning patterns were like an endless rain of fireworks. The power of Lei Jia's attack was especially terrifying, and the impact it set off all rushed towards Chu Hen. The wild lightning flashed in the sky, and the sound was deafening, causing people's blood to boil. Hiss! As expected of the palace master, this power is really terrifying. Many of the spectators outside the sect secretly gasped, and their faces revealed fear and respect. This was a top-notch expert in the victorious Dong Prefecture. If Palace Master Leisha had made a move earlier, the Thunder Saint Palace wouldn't have lost so many people. Everyone knows how to say this kind of thing. Don't tell me you knew this would happen from the beginning? No, I thought I wouldn't even need to use the Supreme Celestial Extermination formation to finish off Chu Hen. Everyone thought so, but now I'm sure. The voice suddenly stopped, and the expression of the person who spoke suddenly changed. What's going on? The others were also staring at the sky above the Divine Thunder platform. They saw that Chu Hen had actually safely retreated from the violent and chaotic lightning patterns. There was not the slightest fluctuation of emotion on his calm face, and the aura emitted from his body was still as sharp as a cold frost blade. Nothing happened to him? Lei Jixin, Lei Xiaolan, the second elder, and the other members of the Thunder Saint Palace all shuddered. Leisha's expression also darkened, and his gaze fell on Chu Hen's left hand. The other party's left arm was encircled by halos of flowing starlight. The interweaving light and shadow gathered at the center of his palm, forming a strange 7-star pattern. Humph, so that's how it is. The killing intent in Leisha's eyes intensified. However, in front of this revered figure, Chu Hen's brows actually floated with a hint of frivolity and disdain. Unfortunately, I don't see you as an opponent. He spoke in a calm voice. These simple words were like a resounding slap to the face of Leisha, as well as everyone in the Thunder Saint Palace. I don't see you as an opponent. This sentence was said by a junior to Leisha. The seemingly calm tone was like a sharp knife that pierced straight into the soul and heart of everyone present. Disdain. True disdain, not even a hint of provocation. This was the most arrogant form of disregard. And the person Chu Hen disregarded was the existence that everyone in the prefecture region feared, Leisha. Then, Chu Hen's gaze swept directly towards Lei Jixin, who was on the other side, with a hint of mockery in his eyes. Eldest Miss Lei, it's time for me to fulfill my promise. Promise? What promise? Everyone was confused, but Lei Jixin's body could not help but tremble, and an inexplicable fear filled her entire face. Chu Hen had indeed given her a promise, and it was also the only promise. That was the scene that Chu Hen had presented to her with an illusion in the Xian Kshetra sky region. No. Lei Jixin trembled, and her face was as pale as a sheet. Before Leisha could react, she saw Chu Hen slowly open his arms in the void, and at the same time, his body rose to a higher area at a gentle and light speed. Buzz. A strange rhythm that had never been seen before spread between the heavens and the earth. With Chu Hen as the center, the air flow of heaven and earth revolved around him. Above the dark sky, rays of light pierced through the thick clouds like divine swords, and then 7 incomparably gorgeous stars appeared. The appearance of the 7 stars in the daytime caused everyone present to reveal a look of deep astonishment. That's 7 stars? How can this be? Buzz. Extremely uneasy trembling covered the sky and covered the earth. Standing proudly in the sky, Chu Hen's body released a brilliance that was like a bright moon. In particular, the 7 stars in his palm were even more dazzling, as bright as crystal, as if he could control the heavens. Feeling Chu Hen's summon, the 9 heavens stirred up a turbulence that swept away the clouds, and the 7 stars that appeared in the sky also burst out with the light of the sun. Thick heavenly might filled the sky and covered the earth. The size of the 7 stars became larger and larger, as if there was a mountain above their heads, and there was an indescribable pressure. No one had ever felt that the stars were so close to them, as if they could reach out and touch them. With the 7 stars gathered, Chu Hen, who was shrouded in starlight and holy radiance, looked like a god. At this moment, a trace of shock finally appeared on Leisha's face, and this trace of shock continued to grow with the surging pressure. Lei Jixin became more and more afraid, and she shouted in a trembling voice, Stop! The corners of Chu Hen's mouth curled into a mocking smile. At this point, how could he stop? Who could understand the pain of Chu Hen's continuous life and death pursuit? Now, it's up to you to bear my hatred and anger, Buzz. As soon as he finished speaking, an extraordinary and earth-shattering force erupted from Chu Hen's body, and a powerful cyclone spread out in the sky. The 7 stars in the 9 heavens shone brightly. 7 stars gather. Buzz, in an instant, 7 gigantic pillars of light that emitted an endless and terrifying aura descended from the sky. They were like divine punishment that could destroy the world. They fell directly towards the majestic mountain gate below. The 9 heavens stars fall, sweeping the 8 desolate calamity. The expressions of everyone in the Thunder Saint Palace changed drastically. These 7 giant pillars of light were like the scythe of the Grim Reaper, full of the aura of destruction. Leisure was also shocked and angry. The terrifying force emitted by these 7 pillars of light made even him tremble. Retreat, retreat. Other than this, Leisure really did not know what order to give, but at this moment, the people of the Thunder Saint Palace were so densely gathered on the main peak. Where should they retreat to? How could they have the time to retreat? Boom! Bang! Almost at the same time, the 7 shocking pillars that originated from the power of the 7 stars all crashed into the Thunder Saint Palace. It was like a divine punishment that could destroy the world, sweeping through everything. At this moment, heaven and earth seemed to have fallen into a great calamity. Violent and whistling like a hurricane, waves after waves of terrifying shock waves were like torrents and tsunamis that had broken through a dam, and they swept out in all directions. The divine lightning platform instantly collapsed, and the huge square shattered inch by inch, layer by layer. Thousands of broken stones and bricks filled the sky. Then, like a volcanic eruption, the entire main peak collapsed with a loud bang. A series of shrill screams sounded like Azura's purgatory, and batch after batch of Thunder Saint Palace disciples were turned into dust by this deadly shock wave. One luxurious building after another was uprooted. In an instant, the mountain gate of the Thunder Saint Palace was destroyed in a carpet attack. 7 giant pillars of light, 7 terrifying forces, 7 incomparably huge sinkholes covered the inside and outside of the Thunder Saint Palace, rapidly expanding in all directions. Countless Thunder Saint Palace disciples were directly smashed into pieces. The second elder, who had previously survived Chu Hen, was still recovering from his injuries. In endless fear, the high platform under his feet was directly smashed into pieces. No. Chapter 944. Boom! Bang! Heaven and earth shook, mountains and rivers cracked, the earth exploded, and the stars swept across the land. The terrifying carpet-like shock waves swept across the various mountain peaks of the Thunder Saint Palace and spread throughout the entire sect. The power of the 7 stars was gathered. 7 star pearls, 7 star souls, all in Chu Hen's hands. The combined attack of the 7 complete star soul pearls could draw the power of the 9 heaven stars, and the power was comparable to that of a divine weapon. Bang! The earth crumbled layer by layer, and the mountains were flattened. The majestic buildings were crushed like tofu under the impact of the shockwave, unable to withstand a single blow. Countless disciples of the Thunder Saint Palace were turned into dust, and many powerful elders were crushed into dregs. The soil and gravel that had been turned over inch by inch, along with the powerful and piercingly cold shockwaves, directly gushed out of the sect. Bang, 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 like a raging hurricane, it rushed through the trees and bushes outside the mountain gate. Those busybodies who were hiding in the dark were all caught off guard. One by one, their silhouettes were sent flying backward. There were even a few people who were close to the scene who were shaken to the point that their internal chi churned, and they spat out blood. Boom! At this moment, the inside and outside of the Thunder Saint Palace was in chaos. Everyone who was secretly watching had a look of shock and fear on their faces. What a terrifying power! Who the hell is this guy? This is King turning the sky upside down. Every pair of trembling pupils revealed only fear towards Chu Hen. The young figure in the sky in front of them was simply like a god of death that could not be crossed and angered. Just when the world thought that things were about to end, Chu Hen created shocking miracles, time and time again. The Thunder Saint Palace was in chaos. In merely an instant, this place that was filled with spiritual energy and was like a paradise for immortals had changed beyond recognition, and it was filled with desolation. 7 huge craters with a diameter of more than 10,000 feet appeared in the sect. Refurbished soil was everywhere, and broken corpses littered the ground. What was once a luxurious building was now nothing but countless ruins. More than half of the Thunder Saint Palace, which had a long history, was forcibly destroyed. The main peak was completely flattened. At a glance, it was almost impossible to find any intact mountain peak. Even the walls of the jade towers on the remote mountain peaks in the back of the mountain were full of cracks and crevices. As for the people of the Thunder Saint Palace, they suffered even more. Several high-level elders were directly blasted into pieces, let alone those disciples with relatively low cultivations. It would be fine if they were scattered. However, more than 80% of the Thunder Saint Palace's experts were gathered at the Divine Thunder Arena on the main peak today. Under such circumstances, the number of casualties could be counted in the tens of thousands. Wails, roars, and roars of hatred were endless. On the destroyed Divine Thunder platform, only half of the stone chair remained in the pile of rubble. Beside the stone chair, Leisha was in a sorry state. His vicious eyes were filled with resentment and endless anger. His face was pale and he clutched his chest with one hand. A trace of blood seemed to flow from the corner of his mouth. Even he found it difficult to withstand the impact of the complete 7-star soul pearl's power. Not far behind Leisha, Lei Jixin was as frightened as a cicada in winter. As most of the shock wave was blocked by Leisha, Lei Jixin was protected, and there were no obvious injuries on her body. However, his mental defenses had already collapsed. Blood flowed like a river, and corpses were everywhere. Tens of thousands of disciples of the Thunder Saint Palace were buried here in an instant. This was revenge from that man. The nightmare she saw in the Xiankshetra sky region had become reality. The scene she saw in the illusion had come true. Lei Jixin sat on the ground powerlessly. Her beautiful face had lost its color. In front of Chu Hen, she lowered her head again. His proud and aloof dignity was trampled to the point that it was worthless. She regretted it. She really regretted it. If she could do it all over again, she would not provoke this terrifying man. Even if Chu Hen disappeared in front of her forever, it would be a nightmare that she could not get rid of. You really deserve to die 1,000,000 times. Leisha's eyes flashed with endless hatred and murderous intent. The sky was filled with dust and frost. The starlight above the 9th heaven gradually faded away, but the light on Chu Hen's body was still so beautiful that it made people feel dazzled. He looked down at Leisha indifferently. "I'm afraid you can't kill me." Leisha gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. As a palace master, he was used to seeing many big scenes. At this moment, his edge was not even 1/10 of Chu Hen's. Chu Hen's eyes swept across the survivors who were gradually calming down. "Maybe it's time to put a full stop, full stop?" His frivolous tone was like a sharp sword, causing the hearts of the people below to tremble. Leisha's eyes also shrank. Hua, a circle of flowing light quietly rippled in front of Chu Hen. Then, a scroll that emitted a simple and unadorned aura appeared in his hand. Revolving beast picture. Leisha's face changed again. In an instant, the revolving beast picture spread out between Chu Hen's hands like a scroll, and all kinds of demonic beast patterns and runes flashed brightly. Vigorous true inner force flowed into it. The scroll immediately shone with extraordinary splendor, releasing a dazzling divine radiance like that of the sun. The dazzling light pierced the sky, and the sky was once again in turmoil. Roar! Roar! Boundless ferocious might crushed down, and it was like a violent storm that shook the heavens. Within the ear-piercing beam of light, the roars of various demonic beasts could be heard one after another. The heavens and the earth spun. Accompanied by the deafening sound of thunder, an incomparably violent aura swept out in all directions. Bang! Boom! Gigantic figures trampled on the ruins below, sending rocks flying everywhere. The roars of demonic beasts pierced the eardrums of everyone present. The sky was filled with black shadows, and hundreds of demonic beasts suddenly appeared in the sky above the Thunder Saint Palace. Screech! The black cloud condor's aura was shocking. Like a flowing light blade, it spread its huge wings and crossed thousands of meters. Wherever it went, the disciples of the Thunder Saint Palace were chopped into pieces. Roar! The heavy rock wild bear's violent attack was like a mountain, and its roar shook the sky. A stomp could split mountains and rivers. Having just experienced the destructive impact of the 7 terrifying star forces, before they had time to stabilize their trembling minds, the siege of the monster beasts once again pushed them into the storm. Even though the Thunder Saint Palace had suffered heavy losses, the number of people was far greater than the number of demonic beasts. But even so, the tired people of the Thunder Saint Palace were dispirited, and they could not withstand the fierce attack of the powerful demonic beasts. The massacre began again. The deaths continued. Boom! But at this moment, the sky above the Thunder Saint Palace suddenly became turbulent, and thunder rumbled. A dangerous aura quietly awakened and spread in this direction. With the appearance of this aura, even high-level heavenly beasts like the black cloud condor and the heavy rock wild bear could not help but reveal expressions of fear. Finally, traces of seriousness surfaced on Chu Hen's indifferent face. Outside the sect, those busybodies in the distance all surged with heartfelt reverence and trembled. As expected, that person is finally going to make a move. That person hasn't shown his face for hundreds of years. Indeed, but everyone knows that he is the true ruler of the Thunder Saint Palace. Respect and awe came from the bottom of their hearts. Everyone looked at the chaotic thunderclouds from afar, as if they were waiting for the arrival of a god. The true person with the highest authority. The Holy Master of the Thunder Saint Palace. Chapter 945. He was the person who held the highest authority. He was a transcendent being above the profound heaven realm. He would exist for eternity and be indestructible. Buzz, buzz. There seemed to be a long and continuous aura surging between heaven and earth. Wild thunderclouds covered the sky and covered the earth, filling the mountains and rivers. Feeling the mysterious and powerful aura that surged over like a tide, everyone in and out of the Thunder Saint Palace couldn't help but feel respect from the bottom of their hearts. The Holy Lord of the Thunder Saint Palace, an ancient eternity stage being. Lei Aoqiong, the powerful aura that could topple the mountains and overturn the seas, continued to attack. The demonic beasts that were summoned all roared at the sky and let out uneasy roars, rumble. Then, under the gazes of countless people filled with awe and shock, the space above the Thunder Saint Palace suddenly twisted into a vortex. The clouds in the sky rolled violently, and countless lightning arcs flashed in the twisted space. Then, a figure that seemed like an emperor and exuded a supreme aura appeared in the sky. A whoosh! A piercingly cold wind swept past, emitting a heavy and cold aura. In an instant, everything in the world was overshadowed. Only the two figures facing each other in the sky were dazzling and dazzling. Everyone in the Thunder Saint Palace, including Palace Master Leisha, became the background. The gigantic demonic beasts were also reduced to a background. It was as if only Chu Hen and Lei Aoqiong were left in the scene. It was as if the stars were competing with the moon. The two of them looked at each other from afar. The air flow between them was as strong as a blade. Leisha clenched his fists and called out respectfully, "Holy, Holy Lord!" If Leisha was the king before, then he was now the subject. The eyes of all the other members of the Thunder Saint Palace lit up as well. As long as this person was here, the Thunder Saint Palace would never perish. It seems like no one has dared to provoke the Thunder Saint Palace for almost 1,000 years. Lei Aoqiong lifted his gaze slightly and looked down at the young figure in front of him in a condescending manner. Although Lei Aoqiong had existed for a long time, he only looked like he was in his 30s or 40s. He looked even younger than Lei Zhe, however. There was a sense of depth in his eyes, as if he had experienced the vicissitudes of time. An ancient eternity stage powerhouse. He was in existence at the top of the pyramid in the Dongxing prefecture. As far as the eye could see, there were only 3 people in the entire province who had reached this level. These 3 people were none other than the Thousand World Sect's sect leader, the palace leader of Jihua Palace, and the sacred leader of Thunder Saint Palace. The passing of time was everlasting. Looking at the Thunder Saint Palace that had been razed to the ground was littered with corpses, and the Thunder Saint Palace was in complete chaos. No matter how arrogant Lei Aoqiong was, his eyes still flashed with an unconcealable killing intent as he looked at the young man who was only in his 20s. Not bad, thanks to you. I almost forgot what anger feels like. Today, I remember it again. His calm and indifferent tone caused people's hearts to palpitate. Roar! The demonic beasts behind Chu Hen let out a low growl. This was a sign of nervousness after sensing danger. This was the disdain of an emperor. He didn't waste any words, because no matter what he said, it wouldn't change Lei Aoqiong's determination to kill Chu Hen. Lei Aoqiong poured his life's blood, sweat, and tears into making the Thunder Saint Palace so powerful. He never thought that it would be destroyed by a mere Chu Hen. More than half of the sect was destroyed, the elders were killed, and the blood of thousands of disciples was splattered on the divine Thunder stage. The Thunder Saint Palace probably wouldn't recover from the damage it suffered today even after the opening of the ancient desolate heaven region. If it wasn't for Chu Hen, the Thunder Saint Palace would surpass the Thousand World Sect and Jihua Palace to become the top of the top 10 forces. But now, the realization of that goal would be far away in the indefinite future. Lei Aoqiong's calm expression hid his endless killing intent towards Chu Hen. However, the state that Chu Hen displayed was a lot calmer than what everyone had expected. On his handsome face that contained traces of bewitchment, there was not the slightest trace of fear. This guy isn't afraid at all? Does he not know how terrifying Lei Aoqiong is? Everyone inside and outside the Thunder Saint Palace was confused. He still hasn't figured out who the person standing in front of him is? But there's no one in the Eastern Victory State who doesn't know about this person from the Thunder Saint Palace. Or rather, this guy knew all this, but he still dared to attack the Thunder Saint Palace. The more they thought about it, the more horrified they became. In an instant, everyone's gaze that looked at Chu Hen was filled with an indescribable disbelief. From the very beginning, everyone believed that it was impossible for Chu Hen to leave the Thunder Saint Palace alive. Even if he used the strength of 7 stars to destroy such a huge sect to such an extent, Chu Hen's fate would not change. The reason was very simple, it was because of Lei Aoqiong. But now, Chu Hen was becoming more and more unfathomable. He was still so calm when facing Lei Aoqiong. Did he have a trump card that he hadn't used yet? A gust of cold wind blew a few leaves that were mixed with sand. Make your move, Chu Hen said calmly. At that moment it was as if time had stopped. The silhouettes of the 2 people in the sky became especially sharp. A frivolous smile appeared on Lei Aoqiong's face. Very good. You've already lost the chance to say your last words. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, a violent cyclone wave swept out between heaven and earth. Along with the rolling tribulation clouds in the sky, the silver light illuminated the blue dome of heaven. A huge palm that covered the sky split apart the layers of clouds, descending from the sky, like the divine hand of a Buddha. It smashed down towards Chu Hen. The space trembled uneasily as a terrifying pressure as a mountain pressed down. The huge palm's shadow covered the sky and the earth. One could even see the palm print on it clearly. A casual attack from an ancient eternity realm cultivator had the power to destroy any profound heaven realm wuxiu. The majestic pressure was hard to shake. Buzz, Chu Hen focused his fingers. With a loud hum, the blue sky sword appeared in front of his fingertips. Chu Hen wielded his sword in the air, and a powerful sword aura burst forth. The blue Rand sword immediately transformed into countless sword shadows that soared into the sky, and gathered into a vigorous sword river, which attacked the thunderous palm that was pressing down on him. Bang, 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 the peerlessly powerful sword shadows were extremely penetrative, but in the face of this huge palm, they were like embroidery needles striking a wall, and were continuously shattered into light and shadow. What shocking power! The spectators in the surrounding area were shocked. Don't you know what to say? The ancient eternity realm true inner force is on a completely different level from the profound heaven realm. Moreover, Lei Aoqiong is the one who can use the sacred body of thunder to its fullest potential. Today's trip was really worth it. I got to see the holy leader of Thunder Saint Palace with my own eyes. Everyone's words were filled with respect and admiration for Lei Aoqiong. It was fine if he didn't make a move, but once he did, the difference between the two of them was obvious. Chu Hen was definitely going to die.